Introduction to the Seven Swords Breaking Immortal Sect. 10,000 years ago, in the chaotic world of demons, the immortals in the upper realm intended to save the common people. 10,000 years later, the border town did not return to the city, and 7 classmates including LV Han and Dong Xinwen embarked on their respective journey of cultivating immortality. A few years ago, aliens invaded and immortals unexpectedly saved Earth, opening the way for survivors to find immortals. The passionate collision of 3 worlds, conspiracy and love mecha. Chapter 1. Youth Tour, buying strange books at a roadside stall. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The yellow sand of the Lioli Desert stretches for thousands of miles, shimmering with dazzling brilliance like glass under the scorching sun. There is a huge spatial crack suspended in mid-air, and inside the crack, it is pitch black like an empty eye in the sky. A young man in a black robe flashed past the crack with a burst of hearty laughter, followed closely by a humanoid creature with blue wings and scales on its back and a unicorn on its head. The young man in the black robe suddenly turned around while flying, his mouth slightly curled up, and his hand held a folding fan pointing towards his back. I saw hundreds of black holes measuring about 10 feet appear out of thin air. Absolute darkness, instantly filled a large space behind the young man in black. The scaled armor demon dared not underestimate it, but it had no way out at this moment. Its huge wings were folded behind it, not retreating but advancing, and it managed to charge out from the gaps of hundreds of zhang black holes, less than 3 zhang away from the young man in the black robe. Unexpectedly, just as it rushed out, a 10 zhang golden sky thunder fell from the sky. The young man in the black robe saw himself also within the range of this golden sky thunder, and his hand swept over the black robe with a folding fan, disappearing into the air. At this point, the sky thunder has arrived. But I saw the demon with a single horned scale body, whose scales had faintly turned dark red, and surprisingly, with only physical strength, it forcefully took down this heavenly thunder. The thunder, light and fire roared as the monsters soared into the sky. The entire piece of glass in the Lioli Desert is shattered. A black light flashed from tens of feet away, and the young man in a black robe, holding a folding fan, burst out into the air and shouted sternly at his head, asking, "Zenyuanzi, did you also want to destroy me just now?" In the high altitude, a red-winged giant dragon is rapidly diving, with a tall and slightly thin old man holding a pitch-black ancient sword standing on its back. If we can eliminate both you and this demon at the same time, the world will be fortunate. Before he could finish speaking, the red dragon's huge mouth opened under his feet, and a blue and white dragon fire shot directly at this scaled demon. But I saw a single horn shining brightly on the head of this demon. Under the light, this dragon fire cannot burn within 10 zhang. At the same time, the young man in the black robe folded the fan in his hand, aimed one hand at the demon in the light, and then the entire space darkened. A beam of 100 zhang black light shot out from one end of the folding fan. The scale armor on the demon's body erupted and suspended in the air, blocking this black light. The 3 of them were deadlocked for a moment. 2 seniors, dodge. Before he could finish speaking, a sword energy that pierced through the sky and earth surged straight into the clouds from bottom to top. The young man in the black robe and the old dragon hurriedly dodged to the side. The demon wanted to dodge, but still couldn't make it. With a click, the horn and one wing on the head were chopped off with one strike. I saw a young man in green coming with a sword, holding back his sword with one hand and pinching a spell with the other. A transparent empty bottle appeared out of thin air, and as he closed his mouth, I saw the dark red blood of the demon gushing out and being sucked into the empty bottle. The Immortal Domain Spirit Palace has indeed produced many talented people, and one of the 3 treasures of the Void Cave, the illusory sky water and moon bottle, can also drive it. I think your old ghost master should have closed his eyes when he died. The black-robed young man raised his folding fan in the wilderness, and a black hole appeared out of thin air next to the demon. The monster dodged a bit late, but one arm was swallowed up by this black hole and disappeared without a trace. More magic blood was sucked into the small bottle on the wound. The demon knew he was unlucky, and his blood-red gaze swept over these three people. A roaring roar soared into the sky. Grab a large piece of scales and armor from the chest and smash it onto the ground. The tall old man couldn't bear the demon to counterattack. The golden sky thunder exploded and simultaneously struck the demon with the red dragon spirit fire under his feet. The power of the thunder fire was so fierce that the young man in green and the young man in black retreated at the same time, still feeling scorching and uncomfortable. The scaled demon in the center of the thunder fire remained in a semi-kneeling position, with smoke and ashes flying above its chest. Its lower body, along with the melted sand, turned into glass and remained forever in this glass desert. Three people gathered in front of the sky, creating a solemn atmosphere. Why, your master has really lost both his form and spirit. The tall old man and the black-robed young man simultaneously took out a token, only to see that a name on it had disappeared, and the two looked at each other with an incredulous expression. Not only that, but all the lower realm members of the Immortal Domain Spirit Palace have fallen in another major battle, and only the younger generation is left with combat power. The young man in the black robe sighed and shook his folding fan lightly. I still admire your master's martial arts cultivation. Unfortunately, his arrogant nature has harmed the entire Imperial Spirit Hall. Just now, the last demon had died, and the 100-year demon tribulation came to an end. Unfortunately, your master did not see the end. The old man shook his head and sighed incessantly. Two seniors, said the young man in green, kneeling on one knee. Now there is only one person left in the power of the Imperial Spirit Hall, and the balance of the three major forces in the immortal world has been broken. The younger generation is willing to represent the Imperial Spirit Hall to withdraw from the competition in the immortal world and use their own cultivation to trap this space crack. However, they hope that the two seniors can spare the remaining disciples in the Imperial Spirit Hall. The two of them looked at each other and the old man said, "When we were discussing together, you were also by your side. This space crack could not be closed but could only be forbidden. Although this first prohibition was once and for all, the person who opened it lost all their immortal power. From then on, they became ordinary people and could no longer return to the immortal world. You must think carefully. I have figured it out, and I only hope that the two seniors can spare the disciples of the Imperial Spirit Hall. Okay. Without the old ghost from the Imperial Spirit Hall stirring up my ghost domain Holy Realm and your Xinwen 72 island, we can finally have a winner. Kid, where is your master's meteorite bracelet?" The black-clothed youth's divine consciousness was released, and the green-clothed youth was immediately seen clean. In the master's battle, a secret technique was used, and although another sky eye was ultimately sealed, the meteorite bracelet and master's body were still sucked into the sky eye. After speaking, the young man raised his hands and a pitch-black bracelet appeared in his palm. The younger generation is willing to offer their own meteorite bracelet. The black-robed youth chuckled coldly. It's better to lose it than to fall into someone else's hands. Speaking, he glanced at the tall old man beside him. That's good, even if the Imperial Spirit Hall is not on this island, the owner can give it a try. How come Zenyuanzi decides here first? The young man in black raised his hand and a pitch-black dot floated above his palm. Don't joke, it's not too late for us to return to the immortal realm. Let's first ban the sky eye. Chapter 1 Buying books. Youth. There is spirit in heaven and earth, and objects ascend to immortality. A thought of good and evil, between immortals and demons. Separation in life and death, a fleeting flower. Only on my own path, my heart is filled with determination. In the mountains thousands of miles away, north of the capital of the Southern Land Emperor, there is a border town called Fugui. Without returning, there is no hope. The 100-zhang city wall stretches for thousands of miles without interruption, and its grandeur cannot be achieved by human labor. According to ancient legend, it was created by immortals using supreme magical power to fear strong enemies. 1,000 years ago, when the city was first built, it was named Fugui, symbolizing the soldiers pledging to defend the border to the death. Who would have thought that after 1,000 years, this place would already be a peaceful scene? The barbarians, who were supposed to be hostile and never give up, come and go in a grand manner between the wells of the cities that do not return. The imperial capital did not sign a peace treaty with the barbarians. 40 years ago, the barbarians captured the city of Fugui. According to our ancestors, 50 years ago, the imperial capital suddenly interrupted all contact with the city of no return, with no soldiers to replenish or goods to supply. This magnificent city of no return was like an island hanging in the air overseas. Although there were millions of strong soldiers and countless natural dangers, the barbarians were several times stronger than me and finally fell 10 years later. Over the past decade, the city lord has sent troops to the imperial capital countless times to seek help. However, they encountered a sea of mist that should not have existed halfway through, and once they entered, they could no longer leave. The vastness of this sea of mist is boundless, and the city lord has also sent some cultivators to try to pass by with swords, but they all returned in vain. Later, the city lord also cut off the path of seeking help and sharpened his army to resist the barbarians. On the day of the city's destruction, it is said that the lord of the city committed suicide to thank Xinwen. Some people say that he died in a fierce battle, while others say that he saw cultivators save him. There is no consensus in the end. After the city was destroyed, the barbarian tribes only killed some officers and soldiers who pledged to resist to the death, and the people were not affected. The originally thought massacre did not occur, but after the war, natural disasters and epidemics continued, resulting in less than half of the people in the city before the war. Suddenly, a brush pressed against the book that the young man was reading. "Young master, since you look gorgeous and probably wealthy, why don't you buy this book and read it carefully at home?" A thin middle-aged scholar saw that the young man was going to continue reading and quickly stopped him. If he had finished reading it, who would he sell it to? The young master, who was about 14 years old and of average height, was dressed in formal attire and had an ordinary appearance. He closed his book and stood up from the ground, patting his muddy buttocks and opening his mouth, saying, "How did your book 10 Years of Land and Culture Without Returning to the City write about 50 years ago, when you were not yet born? It's just a fabricated story." The middle-aged scholar curled his lips and looked up and down at the young man with a pair of triangular eyes. With a proud expression on his face, he said, "Yellow-mouthed children, how much can they recognize at a young age?" Taking the book from the boy's hand, he glanced at it and picked up his pen to stroke the cross. "This is clearly the Chronicles of the 1,000 Years of Land and Culture Without Returning to the City. Don't talk nonsense and ruin my reputation." The young man glanced at the middle-aged scholar with a sideways glance, sighed helplessly, and flipped through several other books, including Detailed Explanation of the Distribution of Natural Resources in Fugui City, Overview of Scenic Spots and Historic Sites in Fugui City, Ranking of the Top 10 Winds and Months in Fugui City, and Biographies of Famous People in Fugui City. There can be more than 10 miscellaneous books. They all start with the 3 characters, "not returning to the city." Is it a set? The young man flipped through a book and gave the scholar a sideways glance. "Are these books so miscellaneous that you wrote them all?" The scholar chuckled and said, "Su only asked himself that his knowledge has changed greatly from ancient to modern times. However, the barbarians, who hold martial arts, regard us as worthless shoes and face the decline of our family. Helplessly, they sell their ancestral property in order to make a living." The scholar saw the young man still picking and choosing without any intention of buying, and mysteriously smiled and whispered, "Young master, may I not be interested in these common things? Come, please take a look here." As he spoke, the scholar opened his greasy collar and revealed a yellow and clear ancient book. Half of the book was painted with a beautiful woman scratching her head and posing. The young man's eyes immediately lit up and he wanted to take a few more glances. The scholar then concealed his collar and whispered in his arms, How about 50 liang of illustrated text analysis of the secret techniques in the house without returning to the city? Don't think it's expensive. This is a masterpiece, and since the barbarians became masters, this book has not been reprinted. I have worked hard for several days to copy and imitate it. Don't you want to collect and study it, young master? The young man glanced around and saw that Su Shusheng was the only one on the vast street, not even the passers-by, so he felt at ease. He pretended to be a legitimate book and leaned forward, whispering in a low voice. Your collection of books is quite diverse, and I just want to increase my knowledge. I have no other intention. I have taken all of your books and the one in your arms. The scholar smiled inexplicably and said, Young master, you are young and eager to learn. You will definitely have great potential in the future. Thank you very much, young master. There are a total of 100 taels. I didn't bring any money, let me go home and pick it up. Okay, what's up at your mansion? That's right behind you. As the scholar turned around, he saw a grand vermilion painted gate over 3 zhang high behind him, with a plaque bearing the words LV Fu in capital letters. There were 3 servants sitting lazily below, looking at this side. The scholar exclaimed in surprise. Stand up and arch to the ground. It turned out that the young master of the LV family was disrespectful. I will pack it up and deliver it to the mansion now. The expression was extremely artificial, and the scholar bent down and slipped another book from his arms. The book was said to be more like half a black brick. The young man weighed it in his hand and found it to be very heavy. Unlike ordinary books, the black book cover was not only hard but also thick and seemed to be made of leather. When he flipped through it gently, the pages were very thin, and the words were small, dense, but very clear. On the cover of the book, he wrote with a brush that there were 2 golden characters behind that no return to the city. It is obvious that the 3 words, not returning to the city, were written by the scholar himself. Black ink on the black cover is very inconspicuous. What is this book? The scholar took the black book and gently wiped the dust off it, saying, This is something that my father accidentally acquired 50 years ago. However, no one recognized the characters on the book. My father recognized it as an immortal book, but in his extreme poverty, he never realized its mysteries. In the end, his family was ruined. Young master, I see that this book has a connection with you, so how about giving half 100 taels of silver as a gift and half a sale? The middle-aged scholar's face was full of flattery and anticipation. The boy glanced and sighed, as if he had seen something nostalgic. Even if it is an item passed down from your family's ancestors, I believe you are also very reluctant to part with it. Although this item has caused your family's downfall, it is also fate and cannot be changed by human labor. The middle-aged scholar looked at the 14-year-old boy in front of him and felt that such mature words should not be spoken from this young population. Since you want to sell it, don't tarnish your ancestors. Even if the items from your ancestors are not easy to sell low, how about 200 taels? Also, since I have a connection with this book, I will add an additional 100 taels. Even if I obtained half of the antique 50 years ago, I will add another 100 taels. There are not many literate people these days, and I respect you as a scholar. It's better to make friends as you and I are both scholars. Seeing that your family situation is difficult, I will give you 300 taels to solve the urgent problem. Let me calculate. A total of 1,000 taels, do you think? The scholar was overjoyed. But all your other books should be returned to me, as the saying goes, friendship between gentlemen, reciprocity. The scholar nodded repeatedly, took out the black book, and then took out the illustrated explanation of the secret arts in the house of not returning to the city, from his pocket, along with several other backpacks on the ground, and handed it over. Jior, a slender girl dressed as a servant, walked over, took a bundle, handed 200 taels of ingots, and sent the scholar away. Watching the young man in Genie and Jior who entered the mansion gate go far away, the servants at the entrance, Lu San and Lu Fong, began to mutter softly. 1,000 taels, isn't that right? Did the young master miscalculate? No mistake, even the fourth prince knows that half of our good books don't go back to the city. The mistake was intentional. Borrowing the words of a scholar to promote it will lead to someone selling books at the entrance of the mansion, which is faster than searching for books everywhere in the city. In a few years, half of the books in the city will enter our fourth prince's study. I don't know if the young prince will be able to read them all in his lifetime. The young man's name is LV Han and he is the fourth prince of LV Mansion. I usually like to take advantage of small advantages. Dozens of huge mahogany bookshelves are displayed in a study, with tens of thousands of books placed on them. The bookshelves are covered in dust, indicating that they are not frequently flipped over. It's strange that there are dozens of windows on the wall, but only 2 are open. Although sunlight is shining in, the study still looks very dim. Lu Han took out the yellow ancient book Illustrated Analysis of the Secret Techniques in the House of Fugui City, and Chronicles of the Thousand-Year History of Fugui City, from his bag, and held the strange black book in his hand. Stacking the rest aside casually, I arrived at a bookshelf in a corner and pushed open a window on the wall. Outside the window, it was not an outdoor space but a secret room. Flipping through the window and entering the room, the area is not large and the decoration is very simple. A bookshelf stands against the wall and several strange books and things are placed on it. 2 colorful paintings are pasted on the wall, a table is placed with several books, a huge wooden chair, and a metal box in the corner has nothing else. With a wave of his hand, a cluster of fluorescence flew out of the air from his palm, and the room immediately lit up. Under the bright fluorescence, LV Han stood on the spacious wooden chair and took a book from the bookshelf that looked like half a black brick. It was placed side by side with the previous one. Gently wipe the dust on it, and look at the 2 identical books for a while. Young LV Han opened the first page of 2 books simultaneously. On the first page bought from Su Shusheng, there is a line of small characters written. Congratulations on being promoted to captain. This Bible is a gift for you. The handwriting is clearly written by a woman. However, another book had a row of crooked symbols written in the same position, which LV Han did not recognize. Chapter 2. Alien Objects, Unusual Immortals and Extraordinary People. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. As Su Shusheng said, this book is not a thing of the local realm, but also not a thing of the immortal family, but a foreign object. Objects from other worlds have existed for a long time, and there are records of foreign objects appearing in the world 100 years ago. But 50 years ago, there were suddenly more foreign objects like this, and basically 3 or 2 of them appeared every year, only these 2 or 3 could be encountered but not sought. Foreign objects, although extremely precious, are often useless. The most precious and useless among them are books. The Book of the Abyss comes with colorful illustrations, and whether it's characters, landscapes, or exotic animal buildings, they are all priceless. This is the only way to understand the Abyss, but if it's just a pile of text, it falls behind because no one can understand it. It's a pity to leave it behind without intention. I don't know when carrying things from another world has become a symbol of status in upper society, a reflection of family background and honor. At the thought of this, Lu Han sighed, looked at the 2 identical Bibles and suddenly remembered something. He jumped up from his chair. Oh no, I didn't go out to buy books. Turning around, he jumped out of the window 3 times and 2 times to reach the door of the study. He lifted his breath and climbed up to the eaves, but a few ups and downs were nowhere to be seen. In a huge mansion without returning to the city, an elderly man with a long beard wearing a blue Taoist robe and immortal demeanor was explaining the key points of using qi to control things to 7 disciples in luxurious clothing and brocade below. A young man in brocade rushed in, and it was the 4th young man of the LV family, LV Han. The old man closed the books on his hand and said to his disciples, "After you go back, practice what we have learned today. Remember not to be lazy and don't go out after nightfall. There have been ghosts lately. Turning his head to look at LV Han, Lu Han, among the disciples, your Lu family is the closest to our sect. Why is it always late to come just one way away? Could it be that you helped another woman pass by today? The disciples in the hall burst into laughter. Master, when I came today, I saw LV Xiaoxi reading a book by the roadside. I don't know who interjected. Master sighed lightly and said, foolish child, this is the lecture note you learned this morning. Take it home and read it carefully. Xia Fuzi. If you are a good book, then copy the Yu Wu Ju another 100 times and submit it tomorrow. The disciples in the hall burst into laughter again. At lunchtime, 8 people sat around a stone table in the courtyard, with a small and exquisite jade bowl in front of each person. This was a bowl of extremely foul-smelling and unbearable immortal soup. Green with black in it is incredibly thick, and there are strands of white in the black, and bubbles occasionally emerge from the bottom of the bowl. All disciples, look at me, I see your expression on the face. Yang Ying, it's your turn today. A thin young man stood up, sighed, and picked up the jade bowl in front of him. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my turn to take the lead again today. In order to cultivate the immortal avenue, I, Yang Ying, will take the lead as a tribute. I closed my eyes and took a sip before drinking it all. The other few people coincidentally picked up the jade bowl in front of them and drank it all in one gulp. Their expressions are indescribable. 8 empty bowls were placed back on the table, and then all 8 of them collapsed on chairs, turning pale green. After a moment, these 8 people finally improved. The only 8 people who can drink this immortal soup are none other than the 8 people in this courtyard. Although there are tens of thousands of disciples of the Immortal Sect, they are still the ones who can practice in the city and accept the guidance of the sect leader himself. Although it was unbearable to drink, considering the cultivation of immortality and the cultivation of immortality, everyone ultimately drank it. After lunch, there is still some time left for afternoon study. LVC, would you like to take a look at the rabbit brochure? The speaker is Lu Ran, the 3rd son of the chairman of Dongxiang Chamber of Commerce, the largest chamber of commerce in the city. He is 15 years old. I just found a better one and haven't had a chance to read it yet. The so-called rabbit brochure is a book from another world, with a silhouette of a rabbit on the cover corner, hence the name rabbit brochure. The album is full of colorful illustrations, featuring women from other worlds, each with blonde hair and blue eyes. They are dressed in disheveled clothes and have strange postures, wearing leather armor but only protecting their bodies. They hold long whips and short sticks, which are quite peculiar. The first time Lu Ran brought this object to the Emperor Wuzong, it immediately exploded and alarmed the master. At that time, the master casually flipped through a few pages and said, "This is a collection of martial arts armor and weapon manuals from a different world. However, if you don't have enough cultivation, it will be useless. After 3 days of studying and comprehending, I will definitely benefit a lot. You should take a 3-day break immediately and go." After speaking, the master drifted away with a rabbit picture book. Leave everyone looking at each other. From then on, Lu Ran became much more low-key. But the book is still inseparable, and if there is anything to do, I will sell this book to others. Sun Pengzi squeezed over. Sun Pengzi, also known as Sun Fugui, is 14 years old and is the 2nd son of the United Chamber of Commerce of non-returning city restaurant and hotel. This kid looks bloated and sluggish, but he is not low in stature. There must be something hidden beneath his thick fat. LV Han's foreign object is also a mobile phone, with a palm-size rectangular and rounded edges. One side is as smooth as the back of a mirror, which is equally smooth and charming. However, in LV Han's view, this object has no other use except for being seen in a mirror. But as a rare foreign object, it will still be carried with you. Others also took out their foreign objects and compared themselves to each other. The afternoon class is basically the practical application of the morning theoretical class. Due to not listening to the lecture in the morning, LV Han didn't know what to do in the afternoon, so he took the lecture notes given by the master and started reading them. He just muddled around until school was over. After leaving the gate of the Imperial Wu sect and passing through a spacious avenue, we arrived home. As soon as I entered the gate of LV Mansion, several servants crouched in the distance, looking over. The cook Xiaoqi was waiting at the door with 2 food boxes, as if he had seen his own father when he saw LV Han. Shout loudly as if afraid others won't hear you. Young master, tonight's dinner will be specially made by my master with jiupin longbao cake and isho wujian cuisine. Which one do you plan to have? I saw Xiaoqi's eyes scanning towards the left side. Jiupin longbao cake looks very good, Lu Han's voice seemed to have increased a bit. Xiaoqi lightly tapped the food box with his fingers. 2 pieces, deliver to the bedroom. Okay, I'll send it over now. How much can we win today? Lu Han asked in a low voice as the 2 of them brushed past each other. 7,000 taels. The old rules. Okay. Xiaoqi gritted his teeth. Lu Han knew that the servants of Lu Fu would bet on food during their leisure time. Lu Han saw the business opportunity and conspired with the cook, Xiaoqi, to cheat and gamble 50 or 50 cents. At first, Xiaoqi was quite happy, but later found out that he had become Lu Han's tool for making money. It was impossible for him to quit now. When Lu Han exposed it, he would inevitably be seriously injured by other servants. By the way, Xiaoqi, call everyone here and I'll work while the sun's not setting. Oh, come over quickly. Young master has been punished for copying books again. Xiaoqi shouted and ran away with the first one carrying the food box. As soon as the door of the mansion closed, Xiaoqi, nicknamed Little Horn, became aware of all the noise in the mansion. For a moment, the entire household was crowded with people, and most of the servants, led by Lao Lu, hid far away. Less than 5 people actually came to help. In the largest courtyard of the entire government, several helpers spread large sheets of paper on the ground, one by one covering the entire courtyard. A bucket filled with ink was placed around the center, with 100 brushes scattered around. Lu Han was speechless as he looked at these sparse servants. There were only a few of the more than 30 servants in the entire mansion. What is the dignity of the 4th young master of the Lu family? Let's all go down. In an instant, only LV Han remained in the vast courtyard. While the sun was still in the sky, LV Han began to copy books. The Yuwu Ju is a mental technique mnemonic for the beginner of the Yuwu sect, consisting of 12 10 words. Although it is thin and several pages long, it is impossible to copy it 100 times overnight. It can only be completed with a Chi-Yu pen. I believe this is also the original intention of the master. All things are born with Qi as the first priority, and the one that goes smoothly connects the 6 meridians to the yang. 100 brushes slowly flew up, dipped in ink, and hung on paper. With a thought in his heart, LV Han fell the first brush. For a moment, the courtyard was filled with radiance, and ink and brush were swirling. An hour later, the servants who had been waiting outside for a long time rushed in. I saw paper scattered all over the courtyard, with densely packed characters everywhere. On the walls, pillars, and LV Han's body, ink stains were everywhere. But most of them are still written on paper. The brushes scattered everywhere, some fell on the paper with a big black dot, some fell into the fish pond, and the precious goldfish flipped its belly. And LV Han collapsed in the center of the courtyard, already unconscious. Opening my eyes again, it was already late at night in the bedroom. There are 2 9th-grade dragon treasure cakes and a thick stack of paper by the table, which are my own masterpieces in the evening. At this point, LV Han's spirit had returned to normal. He pushed open the window and unknowingly entered the secret room. Using fluorescence technique, I opened the yellow ancient book. The secret technique in the House of No Return to the City should be analyzed with images and text and placed it together with another book of the same size on the bookshelf, carefully flipping through each other. As the sky gradually brightened, LV Han closed his book and curled his legs up in a chair, holding his knees with both hands and whispering with his head sandwiched between his legs. The material of the book is exactly the same as that one, but there is nothing special about it. There is definitely something wrong with this book, and no one should know about it. With a flick of his hand, he picked up the Chronicles of the Thousand Years of Land and Culture without returning to the city, in his arms, closed the window of the secret room, and returned to his bedroom. He picked up the 100 copies of the Imperial Treasure Technique and pushed the door to school. The master sat upright in the hall and bowed to the crowd. LV Han approached and respectfully placed the Imperial Treasure Technique 100 times in front of the master. With a casual brush, the master scattered 100 sheets of paper neatly in the air, forming a huge paper wall. Not bad, the master smiled and said, "A child can be taught." Lu Han took a cold breath upon seeing it. "When I finished writing yesterday, I was so tired that I fainted without checking. Now it seems that there are many missing words, damaged scrolls, and huge black dots on the paper where the pen falls." The disciples below also pointed and pointed. The master twisted his long beard and smiled, saying, "Don't laugh, at such a young age, it's not easy to write 100 imperial pens at the same time. I hope you can follow suit. In my opinion, this son has the style of Su and Meng back then." The master looked at LV Han with a approving gaze, which made LV Han a bit uncomfortable. "Master, who is Su Meng?" A young voice drifted out, speaking from the youngest junior sister Su Minger, who had just started her studies a year ago. She was 9 years old this year. "Since you want to know, I will talk about it today. Su Meng is not just one person, but two people. Su is the ancestor of our school of creation, Su Zihui, which is also your ancestor, Su Minger. Meng is the founder of the school of Qi, Meng Zik. Both of our former classmates were people with great supernatural abilities who could understand heaven and earth. How about Master Bai?" The speaker was a tall girl with dark skin and a beautiful appearance, exuding an unusual heroic aura all over her body. She was Imo Ling, the current lord of the Forbidden City and the daughter of the Grand Elder of the Barbarian clan. Master shook his head slowly and said, "How can we compare ourselves? We cannot speak in the same breath. Our generation is not as good as us." This sentence caused a commotion in the audience. "Is there anyone among the cultivators who is more powerful than the master?" A thin young man named Yang Ying opened his mouth and asked. "Yingner, that's not a bad thing. Nowadays, there is no one in the city who is my enemy. But if we go back 1,000 years, no, it's only 50 years ago. I'm afraid I won't be able to sustain this humble Taoist profession for even a day." "What exactly happened 50 years ago?" Lu Ran interjected and asked. "I believe everyone has asked the elders of the clan about this matter. Do they have an answer?" The crowd shook their heads and remained silent. "Lu Han, if you don't go back to the city and discuss the collection of books, it should belong to you. Is there any record of that battle?" Lu Han's heart twitched, and he instinctively wanted to touch the book, Chronicles of the Thousand Years of Land and Culture without returning to the city, in his arms, but he held back in an instant. "Never. Since the elders of your family don't want to say that I can't act on my behalf, today we will only talk about what I have seen and heard, as well as the origin of our sect. 50 years ago, I was just a little older than you guys are now, and I was worshipped by the Imperial Wu sect in the Mingyue Valley of Fugui City. My master, the half-summer immortal Ouching, was a master of the times. During that time, he meditated, practiced Qi, and practiced Taoism, and was very carefree. On that day, the mountain gate opened wide, and I only thought that a distinguished guest would come to pay respects to the mountain. Unexpectedly, after a few days, more than 1,000 people from the entire sect had migrated to this place. Half a month later, another sect of cultivation, the Imperial Qi sect, also arrived across from our sect. That is your current residence, LV Han." For a moment, everyone's gaze was fixed on Lu Han's face. The two sects are both cultivation sects, and although there is usually discord, the country is in dire straits, and the grudges and grievances within the sects are put aside. At that time, my skills were low and I didn't even know how to fly objects. I feel ashamed that no task was assigned to me at that time. I only remember the day the city was destroyed, with dark clouds and fireworks flying everywhere. Only a few dozen people from the army of over 2,000 cultivators had escaped, and everyone was injured and their lives were on the brink of death. A senior uncle handed me a bloodied sect leader token, exhausted his last breath of true energy but didn't say anything. The master took out a blue token the size of a palm from his pocket and placed it on the table. With a gentle flick of his fingers, a clear and bright sound echoed throughout the hall for a long time. I led the remaining martial brothers to evacuate the barbarians, but they were already killed. They were hit in the back with an axe, which destroyed the lineage of our sect. Not only did it hurt me, but it also shattered the baggage behind me. The appearance of scattered pieces of paper still lingers in my memory to this day. And I only managed to retrieve this half of the fragments. As he spoke, he took out half of the imperial treasure technique from his pocket. Speak loudly. This sect's imperial technique is divided into 5 layers, and what you have learned is only one layer of chi material. There are also imperial, transforming, refining, and combining materials on top of them. Unfortunately, there is no inheritance above transforming. There was a complete silence in the hall, and Sun Pengzi said, "Where are the people from the Imperial Chi sect?" Everyone's gaze turned to Sun Pengzi. Opportunities are rare, so no one can ask. Sun Pengzi murmured softly. Wealth and prosperity, you don't have to ask me. After the Battle of the Broken City, the inheritance of the Imperial Chi sect has already been cut off. The Imperial Chi sect and our sect share the same roots and origin, but they are divided into 2 schools for some reason. It seems that the cultivation philosophy does not match. The head of the Imperial Chi sect cultivates swords and uses the sword to control the chi and chi, causing everything to be broken. He takes the path of killing with one strike and takes the person's head 100 zhang away. After speaking, the master picked up the bamboo pen on the table and waved it casually. An invisible aura burst out of the air, and a tree outside the hall with a bowl-shaped mouth was cut diagonally. The courtyard wall behind the tree was also cut open, 1 person high. Everyone was amazed and envious. Master put down his bamboo pen and said slowly. And the objects that this sect guards are mostly swords, but they are known for their lightness and agility, which are beyond the reach of attacking people and beyond the reach of defeating enemies. The master pinched the finger formula with his right hand, and the 9 bamboo pens in the hall flew up and down in the air. In an instant, the direction changed and only a few muffled sounds were heard. 9 brushes were inserted into the stone slabs on the ground in the hall one by one, several inches in length, without any damage to the pens. The entrance above the stone slabs was smooth, neat, and without any cracks. Everyone was waiting to applaud when they heard Master's warm reprimand. They then shifted their gaze from the ground to Master, who appeared on the table with a row of black dots scattered over his green shirt, white beard, and jade face. The crowd burst into laughter. Don't laugh, don't laugh. Everyone should submit the Imperial Treasure Technique 100 times tomorrow. Everyone's laughter immediately stopped, except for Sun Pengzi who seemed to have not heard him and was still laughing. Rich and noble, you've done it 200 times. Sun Pengzi finally woke up and murmured softly. I said you didn't even smile just now. The master got up and straightened his clothes, leaving in a daze, probably changing clothes and washing up. A few people in the classroom immediately came down, some studying the neatly cut trees in the yard, and some studying the 9 bamboo pens stuck on the ground. Only Sun Pengzi silently took out a few pieces of paper and laid them on the ground, got up and bent down to pick up the 9 pens that were shot on the ground. Unexpectedly, just as his hand touched the pens, there was a crisp snap, and the 9 pens shattered at the same time. Everyone was startled, and the screams of surprise even attracted the two people outside who were looking at the trees. A gust of fresh wind swept across the ground, leaving only 9 neat round holes and nothing else. The next day. Early in the morning, Lu Han pushed open the window and suddenly a piece of paper filled with words rushed in. Glancing at it and sighing, he quickly grabbed the 100 copies of the Imperial Treasure Technique that he had copied yesterday and rushed out of the mansion gate, arriving at the courtyard in front of the opposite hall. Before the school, there was a huge courtyard surrounded by green grass and blue stones, and the flowing bamboo forest was very elegant. Sure enough, all the paper on the ground flew onto the room. Sun Pengzi held 2 pens and fell to the ground, sleeping soundly. LV Han patted Sun Pengzi's face. "Don't sleep, take a look for yourself." Sun Pengzi rubbed his eyes and patted his face, looking around and exclaiming in surprise. "I clearly placed it neatly on the table yesterday, how could it be? You didn't hold something down, did you?" "Ah, I forgot, pick it up, what are you waiting for?" "Oh. 68, 69, 70, how many tickets do you have on your end, LV Han?" 101, 102, 103 sheets, oh. That's enough, isn't it? Don't you know how to count? There are still 20.7 missing. Isn't that quite a lot for you? He pointed to LV Han's 100 sheets. We both have similar characters, there are 200 of them mixed together, and Master may not be able to tell. What should I do for you? You still have time to write a few more copies. I don't have time to write. I can only write 30 imperial pens at the same time, but now it seems that I don't have enough time to write one. How about this? I'll exchange one foreign object for your 20.7. Lu Han gritted his teeth and a good word popped out of his mouth. A foreign object, transaction, counting out 20.7 pieces, he threw them to Sun Fatty. He stepped up and rushed to the study, where he picked up a bundle of paper pads and stepped back to the front of the hall. With a pinch of the finger, 20.7 pieces of paper instantly spread out in front of me, and 100 brushes scattered around me flew up at the same time. Fatty guy, where's Imo? No more. 100 pens fell to the ground with a clattering sound and turned back to the mansion. Rushing into the study, he picked up a bucket of ink and returned to the front of the classroom to open it, calming his mood for a while. It's too late to write one pen at a time, we can only take risks. 100 pens were covered in ink, or 3 or 4 were hanging on paper. With a thought, the 100 pens moved simultaneously. More than half of the characters were written differently, and Lu Han widened his eyes. His eyes rolled back and forth in his eyes, scanning all the papers. His lips moved slightly and his hands extended forward, his 10 fingers twitching incessantly, and sweat soaked his whole body in an instant. Later on, my eyes couldn't keep up, so I decided to close my eyes and cross my heart. I clenched my fists and lowered my head slightly on both sides of my body, abandoning all external distractions and focusing on controlling my own breath. I don't know how long it took, but when I opened my eyes, 100 pens scattered and smashed against the surrounding courtyard walls. 27 pieces of paper slowly fell from the air and scattered on the ground. Lu Han was so tired that he almost collapsed and knelt on the ground. The floor tiles were soaked with sweat. Fatty guy, how long has it been? I saw Sun Pengzi leaning against a pillar, holding a bundle of paper in his arms and unable to close his mouth. It didn't take long. After you closed your eyes, both the paper and pen flew up, and within a few breaths, all the pens hit the wall. Then you opened your eyes. What? I feel like it's been a long time, said Lu Han. Looking back, there was not a single person around except for Sun Pengzi, as if it hadn't really been long. Climbing over and picking up a piece of paper, I saw that the first half of the paper was in a chaotic state, and the second half was exceptionally neat, with no black spots on it. Sun Pengzi held a bundle of paper and picked up the paper on the ground while muttering. After you closed your eyes, I realized that although the pen was still moving, the tip of the pen had already left the paper. I felt like you were not writing with an imperial pen, but with an imperial ink. After picking up 27 pieces of paper on the ground, the fat man asked. What about the rest of you? I just remembered when I went back to the study to pick up paper and casually threw it into the study. Liu Han turned around and slammed his body heavily against the courtyard wall with a thud. Chapter 3. Ghost and Goddess Women, there are differences in front and behind people. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. In a hazy moment, Liu Han half squinted his eyes, as if seeing a pretty face swaying in front of him. He struggled to open one eye and saw Dong Xinwen blinking his big eyes, looking down at him. Her name is Dong Xinwen, and she is a girl who embodies both gods and ghosts. Dong Xinwen's figure in Feng Shuangqi is already concave and convex, with eyebrows, apricot eyes, and slightly upturned lips. He always wears a goose-yellow long dress and palace attire. If it weren't for 1 foot stepping on Liu Han's face, he would definitely be the best choice for living at home. If you're not dead, don't pretend to be dead. Don't act like a lady, get up for me. Opening the blanket on Liu Han's body, he instinctively covered his chest with both hands, thinking too much. Not only was he dressed neatly, but he didn't even take off his shoes. Dong Xinwen's smooth and tender feet still stepped on Liu Han's face without moving a little. The master said you should be able to wake up today, don't let me waste time drinking it beforehand. Liu Han didn't even need to turn his head, he knew what it was just by smelling it. It was a sticky liquid with a sour black-green color and white streaks of bubbles. Judging by its size, it should be able to last for 5 days. It's also my fault for being unlucky. I slept like a dead pig the other 4 days and had to wake up on my day. Can't you sleep an extra day? Liu Han lay in bed looking up at her, reaching out to move the foot that had been stepped on her face. Unexpectedly, she took the initiative to retract it and stomped heavily on her stomach, causing Liu Han's body to twist with a loud cry. Dong Xinwen had a strange smile on his face, picking up the large bowl by the table with his right hand and gripping his cheeks with his left hand. He grinned and forcefully poured it into Liu Han's mouth. Liu Han thought to himself, let me get up and drink it myself. However, the viscous liquid kept pouring in and out, unable to say anything. There is always a feeling of biting without breaking. After a large bowl of jars went down, Dong Xinwen jumped out of bed, wiped his hands on Liu Han, and put on shoes and socks. Liu Han sat up reluctantly, feeling dizzy and nauseous again. He tried to regulate his breathing for a while before finally improving. Wiping his mouth with his sleeve, he said. This taste is not right, it's not what we usually drink. Don't ask me, I don't know anything, anyway, the bowl I brought today is fresh. Liu Han's face turned green, and as he lowered his head, he saw 5 small empty bowls scattered around the bed, with green residue inside. There was a liver ache in my heart, and it was you, Dong Xinwen. If someone else sees me, I won't kill him. Dong Xinwen stood by the bed, dressed in shoes and socks, tidying up his clothes. The goose-yellow ribbon fluttered like a fairy, and it was hard to imagine that what he had just done was done by her. Liu Han was lost in thought when she took something from the table and threw it over. Liu Han instinctively caught it, which was a small box carved of red and jade, very exquisite. Inside is a ring, with a silver-white metal structure embedded in the middle with a transparent stone the size of a soybean, shining with colorful light. This is a foreign object named Diamond Ring. I remember seeing a similar item in a book of exotic maps. The stone on top is far less grand, but the price below is far higher than Liu Han's phone. I think this thing must be extremely precious. What is this precious thing for me? It's not from me, it's from Sun Pengzi for you. A chubby face immediately appeared in Liu Han's mind, and he didn't need to be polite. Just as he was about to put away Dong Xinwen, he said. This looks pretty, give it to me. A foreign object is priceless, and although Liu Han raised his hand to give it to her, it did not conform to his tendency to take advantage of small things, so he covered his stomach and pretended to be uncomfortable. Just now. The foot on your stomach hurt me so much. Rub this for me and I'll give it to you. Don't say I didn't give it a chance. I saw Dong Xinwen smiling and walking to the bedside, stepping on the edge of the bed with one foot and exerting force. Half of the bed collapsed in response, and LV Han rolled from the bed to her feet. He grabbed LV Han's wrist with one hand and shouted, causing LV Han's hand to open. The pain made LV Han feel dizzy, and the ring had already reached her hand. Is this unknown? Just as he was about to sit up from the ground, Dong Xinwen threw his ring over again. Now this ring is given to you by Miss, please remember my personal debt. After speaking, he turned around and pushed the door away. The chubby face of Sun Fugui in LV Han's mind was instantly replaced by the cute and playful little face of Dong Xinwen. At this moment, Dong Xinwen's gentle and watery voice came from the door. Young Master LV, take a good rest. I'll come see you again next time I leave. Ah, Zhang Mama, you're also here. Hello Zhang Mama. Miss Dong, are you looking for our young master again? LV Han knew that all the words outside Dong Xinwen's door were meant for servants to hear. In front of others, she was a gentle, lovely, dignified, and beautiful perfect goddess, but only when she was alone with LV Han was she a ghost. Woo-woo, have someone change my bed. LV Han sat on a new bed, caressing his stomach with his left hand and the ring with his right hand, recalling everything that had just happened. LV Han and Dong Xinwen have known each other since childhood, and they are neighbors. Although they are neighbors, the doors of the two families are really far apart. After all, the mansions of both families are very large. This is the North City, where wealthy people gather. Although most families are neighbors, it takes a long time to walk through a door. Dong and LV are close friends and have many business dealings, so they get closer together. After a long time, the servants of the two families would not be surprised. LV Han often climbed over the wall to play at Dong Xinwen's house, or Dong Xinwen took a beast cart to visit LV Han's house. Dong Xinwen sees others who are polite, well-behaved, and adorable. Only when he is with LV Han will he relax and vent his suppressed emotions. Over the years, LV Han has become accustomed to it. Speaking of which, she is the only one who can go back and forth in and out of the LV mansion like no one else. It's better to find a place where she can't go to recuperate. Lu Han carried the blanket to the study, which was a forbidden area of the Lu mansion. The three large characters on the plaque, "Do not enter the Zhai," were written by the previous head of the family, Grandpa Lu Han. It was once publicly declared a forbidden area, and no one except Lu Han and him was allowed to enter. Actually, even if Grandpa doesn't announce it, there won't be many people who love to come in. After all, there aren't many people who know how to read these days. In the secret room, LV Han opened the top 10 wind and moon rankings of not returning to the city he had bought from Su Shusheng and flipped through it. First place, Yihangyuan No. 2 store, owned by Dong Tiansheng. Second place, Feihong No. 5 store, owned by Dong Tiansheng. The third place is Dong Tiansheng, the owner of the No. 3 store in Lixia Yuan. I have always seen that the 9th store is owned by Dong Tiansheng, which is also the property of Grandpa Dong Xinwen. 10th place, Chunhua Shuyue, owner, Dong Xinwen, address, Zhongcheng. In fact, not only these 10 stores, but also all entertainment venues in the city are owned by her family. Not only that, all smoking, gambling, and martial arts escort agencies are monopolized by the Dong family. And the LV family is the biggest loyal customer of the Dong family. The old men of both families were the last batch of soldiers who rushed from the imperial capital for thousands of miles and did not return to the city 50 years ago. This was what Grandpa Lu Han said, but Lu Han definitely did not believe it. With the mysterious methods of Grandpa Lu and the Zhengyang Wen Qi technique of Grandpa Dong, it is impossible for him to be just a soldier in the imperial capital. There must be other hidden secrets. After the Battle of the Broken City, the lord of the city disappeared, and the main force of the Tiger Flag camp was almost dead and injured. The recruited soldiers scattered and fled when they saw the city break, while the 2,000 cultivators inexplicably destroyed the group. The defending coalition army, which claimed to have millions of armor, was annihilated by 70.8% in just one day. After the barbarians came to power, they went to remote areas in the rear to carry out large-scale construction. A city within a city was built in just over a decade, named Wuwang. The elder of the barbarian people commanded the two cities of hope and no return, and thus the two cities remained peaceful. But this doesn't belong to the city and there are no more officers or soldiers. After breaking through the city, Dong Tiansheng, who was in his 30s, was in his prime and relied on his Xingyang Ichi technique to open a martial arts school and recruit disciples. His influence grew stronger and stronger. Due to his lack of official status, he successfully defeated several other forces in several epic battles of 10,000 people and unified the underground world without returning to the city. He established the Ichi Association, which symbolizes unity and unity. All those who have a strong sense of anger should wear a sleeveless yellow shirt with the words Ichi written on their back. Entertainment gambling houses are their main source of income, so they run everywhere. And with his almost demon-like eloquence and brainwashing twisted theories, Mr. LV incited a large number of homeless people to mine and cut down trees. The construction of Wuwang City requires a large amount of civil and stone work. At that time, there were nearly 1 million people mining under Mr. LV's banner. These people either have divorced wives, scattered children, or lost families. Either the powerful without livelihood skills or the corrupt scholars who only know how to read, these people have lost confidence in life or live a life without survival skills. When you have money, go to the gambling house for entertainment and consumption. If you run out of money, you can go back to mine. The LV family also lives a comfortable life, including food and shelter. Dong Tiansheng and several other major chambers of commerce, such as the wealthy family of Lu Ransun, paid a portion of the money as taxes to the barbarians. The barbarians would then give the money to LV Zimu to buy civil engineering, gold, and stone, and LV Zimu's miners would use this money to squander in various chambers of commerce, creating a cycle of continuous growth. Mr. Dong has a son who is very ambitious and has given birth to 10 grandchildren and 1 granddaughter. As the saying goes, rarity is precious, and Mr. Dong dotes on this granddaughter, who is Dong Xinwen. The strange power all over his body comes from Mr. Dong's personal transmission of the Zhengyang Qi Ju, which is why Ju Yang Qi is too domineering and not suitable for women to practice for a long time, so he is worshipped by the Imperial Wu sect. Speaking of the Wu sect, it was also the Xuxian sect that only made a comeback nearly 20 years ago. Before that, it was a situation where Dong Tiansheng and Mr. LV stood side by side without returning to the city. Lu Han put down his hand and looked at the moonlight in the study outside the window. It was already late at night, with his legs curled up in a chair and his head buried between his legs. He also held his ring in his hand and fell asleep deeply, rarely having a dream. I dreamed of a man and a woman, 2 children running among the flowers. Then, the little boy was caught up by the little girl and beaten up. Lu Han woke up in shock. The next morning, I arrived at the front of the hall. Dong Xinwen and Mo Ling were whispering, their faces turning red. Mo Ling looked at Lu Han with disdainful eyes, while Su Ming'er looked at Mo Ling as if she hadn't heard Dong. Sun Pengzi sat in the corner, munching on a bowl of noodles while the 2 food boxes next to him were already empty. Lu Ran was recommending his picture album to Yang Ying, but Yang Ying expressed that she didn't want to read it. At this moment, a person lightly pushed LV Han. Go in. Everyone is waiting for you. Senior Sister Shirlu, who is 16 years old, is commonly referred to as Sister Shirlu. She is ambitious, eager to learn, and quiet. She started her studies 1 year earlier than Lu Han. Sun Pengzi finished his last bite of noodles, drank the soup from the bowl, wiped his mouth with his sleeve, and said to LV Han. "The ring I gave you." Lu Han took a swift step forward and covered his mouth, almost replacing the delicate image in his mind with his chubby face. Sun Pengzi was startled but didn't react, so he heard LV Han whispering. "Don't mention this matter again in the future. Did you hear me?" Although Sun Pengzi was not sure why, he nodded fiercely when he saw LV Han speaking seriously. Only then did LV Han let go and rub the oil stains on his big red brocade robe. Master went to the hall, and after the ceremony, everyone sat down. Master spoke. "Our cultivation of immortals is a matter of defying the heavens, and we can only pursue it slowly. However, the law of heaven rewards diligence, and we can also change the destiny." After speaking, he raised his hand and said, "Lu Han, come forward." Everyone looked at LV Han, who also walked up the stage in mist. The master took out a piece of paper from his pocket and asked in front of him, "But it was done by you?" Looking down, it was indeed one of the 20.7 pieces of paper. "Nod your head." "It's what I wrote." "Hand." Yan extended his right hand, and Master extended his 2 fingers and landed them on his wrist, nodding and smiling for a moment. "You know you have entered the realm of imperial objects." LV Han remained silent in a daze. The realm of qi in objects aims to strengthen the body, strengthen the foundation, and cultivate the essence. Advanced individuals can control tangible objects within a few zhang of the body. The realm of controlling objects can control intangible objects or tangible spiritual objects within 100 zhang of the body. Advanced individuals can control objects like the body, the thoughts of the mind, and the movements of objects. There was no movement from the master, and 3 items appeared on the table. An exceptionally antique blue bracelet, a blue flying sword, and a red pill the size of an egg. Master picked up the bracelet and put it on LV Han's hand. "This is a treasure of our sect. The storage bracelet is used for storing things. Once you have reached the realm of the object, you can use it. You can enter it as you reach the chi you think, and you can also exit it as you reach the chi you think." Lu Han had heard of a storage bracelet before, and today when he finally saw his own storage bracelet, his heart was pounding. "This is the Yunk sword, a spiritual sword forged by our sect. Although its level is not high, it is more than 100 times stronger than ordinary iron." He took it with both hands and glanced at it. With a stroke of his right hand, he placed it inside the storage bracelet. The master smiled and nodded in recognition. "This is the meditation pill that can save you months of hard work." As he spoke, the fiery red pill slowly flew into LV Han's mouth. "Swallow." Master's sentence seems to have been spoken a bit late. "Oh no, I've already bitten it open. A warm and smooth feeling flowed into my mouth. Master, I." With a choking mouth, the master took a step back and frowned. In an instant, the entire lobby was filled with a strong sour smell that made him want to vomit. As they turned around, everyone covered their noses and looked at LV Han. The taste was so familiar, it was the high-pressure concentrated version of the bowl of immortal soup they drank every noon. Lu Han opened his mouth and felt nauseous. One of the master's hands was stuck in Lu Han's mouth, while the other hand was thrusting in his abdomen. He felt a suction force in his abdomen that sucked everything from his mouth into his stomach. "This pill is not easy, don't waste it." Lu Han breathed a sigh of relief. "Xia Fuzi." The master took another step back, waved his hand, and a refreshing breeze blew through the lobby, instantly refreshing the air. "Next, let's talk to our fellow disciples about our current feelings." LV Han turned around to face the 7 of them, and the master quietly stepped aside. Lu Han's gaze swept over each of their faces, revealing fear and unease. There were originally many emotions to express, but it was really not appropriate in this situation. Finally, LV Han fixed his gaze on Sun Pengzi. "I didn't expect him to speak first. What are you looking at me for? I didn't offend you. I don't know which tendon LV Han made a mistake at that time, so he casually said. Son Fatty, you still owe me that 4,000 taels. A strong sour smell erupted from the mouth, causing Dong Xinwen and Su Ming'er in the first row to stand up with their hair on end. Sun Pengzi in the second row slapped the table and stood up shouting. How could there be someone like you, 4,000 taels? Even though it's only 3,500 taels, your paper and pen are so expensive for me. Damn. As Sun Pengzi spoke, he vomited out directly. The noodles he had just eaten spat out a table and Dong Xinwen's hair. Dong Xinwen screamed and turned around, using Zheng Yang's 10 out of 10 energy to smash Sun Pengzi's table and the vomit on it. Zhaozuiyuan.com except for Lu ran behind Sun Fatty who was blocked by him, Mo Ling, Shi Lu, and Yang Ying were all shameless and chattered incessantly after he vomited. Everyone's evaluation is reasonable. Why don't you grab a bucket of ink that sells me 500 taels? This total is only 3,500 taels. How did you get 4,000 taels? Don't you need interest for these 5 days? You begged me to buy my paper and pen back then, saying that your home is far away, and I see you as pitiful. Lu Ran covered her nose and lay on the table, hiding behind Sun Pengzi, shouting. Can you stop talking to him? Please, Sun Fugui, can I give you this money? Sun Pengzi turned around. This is not a matter of money or not. The mixture of noodles and sawdust on her stomach shook Lu Ran's face. Fatty guy, I'll fight with you. I haven't been afraid of anyone before when fighting. With a push of her hand, Lu Ran stepped back and knocked down Mo Ling and Yang Ying in the fourth row behind her. And the stone willows in the third row have long been moved aside. Sun Fugui, Lu Ran, Mo Ling, and Yang Ying, the 3 men and 1 woman, started fighting in the classroom. Lu Han stood on stage and shouted, pulling his neck from below. I've been unconscious for 5 days just because of your poor homework, and I haven't asked you to compensate me for my youth loss. The stench from the source keeps coming out of the mouth, and since we can't smell it anymore, we don't care about others. Dong Xinwen, who had regained his composure, stood on the side and whispered to dissuade him. Don't hit me anymore, I'll tell the master if you hit me again. Su Ming'er, who was hiding next to her master, looked up at him and whispered, do you manage it? Master smiled and shook his head in silence. That year, that day, time passed very slowly. Hashtag. Chapter 4. Form without chi, there is a big killer in the book. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. After that small riot, the master alone gave Lu Han the next stage of education. Explained some common misconceptions that are easy to fall into during cultivation, and provided a book on the cultivation techniques of the realm of imperial objects for good comprehension and study. After returning, you will meditate in seclusion for half a year to dissolve the internal medicine. The realm of controlling things varies from person to person and cannot be generalized. You have a clear understanding of the basic knowledge, and most of the cultivation in the future will depend on you. After half a year, you can come or not to learn in the classroom. The path of cultivating immortals is endless, and we will never be able to see what happens in our lifetime. We hope that your immortal fate will continue to become a great path. Don't forget your original intention, and prioritize the well-being of all people in the world. Speaking, he stood up and arched his hand. LV Han also returned the gift in a similar manner. A few days later, the first seclusion took place in LV Han's secret room. Although the room was only separated by a wall from the outside world and the servants knew of its existence, it was only in recent years that not entering the fast was listed as a forbidden area. As soon as the door was closed, the servants of the LV family started a round of gambling outside. LV Han left the border for a few days and even contacted the servants of several neighboring families. It was said that the gambling had reached nearly 100,000 taels. After all, the fact that entering the realm of imperial objects requires seclusion was widely known by the entire Beiqing people on the day when Sun Fugui and his companions went back to promote it. The line of people who came to give gifts and congratulations that evening lined up a long way away. Many people originally wanted to give gifts and congratulations to their master, but a sign was erected at the entrance of the Imperial Household Department to refuse visitors, so they all went to the opposite side. That evening, the LV mansion held a grand banquet with colorful decorations and decorations. Hundreds of tables of banquets have been set up on the main road at the entrance, and those servants in the mansion are usually idle like nothing. This time it's not enough. Call the servants and chefs from several nearby households to help. I believe that the dish mouth was spread among the servants at that time. If the food really can't be served, go to the restaurant to book it. Fortunately, the house is spacious enough for adults to enter. There was too much commotion in the LV mansion this time, and all the high-level officials of Jiawang City outside the city were alarmed. The Grand Elder of the barbarian tribe sent people to congratulate him, and Mr. Dong also personally attended. The various business association presidents overwhelmed LV Han's parents. The gifts given were mostly gold and silver products, cloth and jade artifacts. After checking them one by one, none of them were spiritual objects. However, there were several high-level executives who sent several foreign objects. As the protagonist of this grand event, LV Han naturally won't be present. I'm sure none of those 7 people will come. They should all be taking showers at home, and Master is no exception. Only a few people know the true reason why LV Han cannot attend and only claims that he has just achieved his divine skills and needs to rest in his body. Lu Han curled up in his chair, listening to the commotion outside and ignoring it. He began to meditate and practice his martial arts on his own. After dawn, he left the secret room and pointed to several boxes of gifts piled up in the mountains. Without even looking, some servants placed them at the entrance of the non-entry room. Later, I wanted to inform my parents that they had been in seclusion for 6 months, but I didn't expect to see them and I didn't know where they had gone. Returning to the Chamber of Secrets, he placed those boxes in the corner and began to meditate, use his skills to dissolve the power of the elixir, and cultivate the second level of the realm of imperial objects. The seclusion went very smoothly this time. The medicine that was supposed to take 6 months to resolve was absorbed in just 1 month. Is it because it was bitten to pieces that it dissolves and absorbs quickly? LV Han only felt that his whole body was much lighter than before, and the spiritual energy in his body had more than doubled. And there are also many insights and discoveries about the realm of imperial objects. Emperor Yuwu believes that all things have spirits, and if the spiritual energy is strong, the object is strong, and if the spiritual energy is weak, the object is weak. The strength of the spiritual energy of an object is fixed. People who practice can perceive the strength of an object's qi through their own qi, and if it reaches a certain level, it is a spiritual object. And cultivators can enhance their spiritual energy through cultivation, in order to control powerful spiritual objects and strengthen themselves. Taking the Skylark sword as an example, to drive this sword, one needs to consume 1/3 of their own energy. Operating this sword can unleash its full power, and the longer the operation time, the more energy is consumed. After completion, the energy consumed by operating this sword will completely disappear, and you need to slowly regain your energy. If one's own spiritual energy is strong, driving this sword requires only 1/1000th of its spiritual energy, which can be ignored. On the contrary, if 2/3 of the spiritual energy is forcefully infused into this sword, although it can significantly increase its power in a short period of time, when the spiritual energy is depleted, it will inevitably shatter invisibly like those 9 bamboo pens. Invisible objects are not practical. Taking water as an example, LV Han can now control it to float in the air and change its simple form, which is too complex. And it cannot change the amount of water. Fire is the same, it can control the direction of its movement but cannot change its size or create fire out of thin air. When facing enemies, where can we find so much water and fire? This is probably the reason why Emperor Wuzong mainly focuses on using swords. Placed in the light, the wind is too ethereal, making it impossible to resist the current cultivation. When it comes to light, one will think of fluorescence technique, but this is not an imperial object, it is just a low-level skill that forcefully gathers a little bit of qi outside the body. It is a skill that even cultivators can use. In fact, this is somewhat similar to the positive yang energy of the Dong family. Positive yang energy only forcibly concentrates the positive yang energy in the body to a point inside the body, while increasing the hardness, speed, and strength of the surrounding body. If you can't guide qi out of your body and send and receive it freely, it's just a bit of advanced mortal martial arts. Placing lightning can indeed withstand it, but how to generate lightning is a problem. Another discovery excited LV Han for a long time. Foreign objects can be kept away. In the past, when flying eaves, climbing walls, and transferring property in the realm of qi and objects, it was only due to strong physical health. Later on, it was discovered that he had used his qi to protect the pair of exotic military shoes under his feet. A common characteristic of foreign objects is the lack of spiritual energy. The phrase, "all things have spirit," is not suitable for foreign objects, so LV Han was able to easily identify those few foreign objects among the many gifts on the small mountain. What delighted LV Han the most was that no matter how much spiritual energy you added, it would only make the foreign object stronger and not damage it like a bamboo pen. This discovery further strengthened LV Han's determination to replace spiritual objects with foreign objects. Nowadays, it is particularly important to find foreign objects that can be used. Foreign objects in the city are extremely rare and cherished. The Emperor Wuzong does not have it, as foreign objects without spiritual energy are considered the lowest level of mortals in their eyes. How many aristocratic families have a few items? To ordinary people, they are just rare ornaments. Ordinary people would not have it, even if they occasionally find it, they would be busy selling it to several wealthy families. And the only 8 people who can truly come into contact with foreign objects and use them in cultivation are probably LV Han and others. It has been 3 months since I closed down. Lu Han leaned over the window and watched the hazy moonlight. He took out a lighter and lit a cigarette, took a sip, and coughed lightly twice. The smell of the cigarette was still not very familiar. Looking back at the large box of cigarettes on the table, I thought to myself. Mr. Dong, you did what you said, it's my turn next. Looking back on these 3 months, the initial noisy seclusion, alchemy cultivation, discovery and comprehension, ecstatic experimentation, and ultimately disappointment and helplessness. Life is really unpredictable. For the past 2 months, LV Han has been constantly experimenting and found that there are only 2 or 3 types of foreign objects suitable for combat, apart from shoes. Looking at his pile of collectibles, his heart feels cold. Put the things you can use into the storage bracelet, open the metal box in the corner of the secret room, pour out a pile of iron blocks the size of goose eggs, and find a set of worn out clothes at the bottom. The blue shirt has several holes on the chest, and the yellow pants are patched. A green belt is placed in the middle. Dress neatly, tonight LV Han will fulfill his childhood promise. Upon arriving in the courtyard, LV Han's mind stirred as he slowly floated in the air, flying south. After flying under the night sky for an hour, it slowly descended and reached its destination. Under the cold moonlight, the dark and dim alleys were densely packed with low thatched earth houses. The grass and mud were everywhere, and from time to time, a few dog barks could be heard, making it even more desolate. Walking alone on this bumpy dirt road under the moonlight, LV Han's heart began to beat wildly, his hands trembling violently, not afraid but excited. LV Han wanted to kill someone, and he thought about it for 10 years. Lu Han doesn't know where this is, he only knows that it is the southern city that doesn't return to the city. The southern city is very large, even larger than the sum of the eastern and western cities. After walking for a long time without seeing anyone, Lu Han was feeling frustrated when he suddenly heard a few screams from a woman. Upon hearing the sound, he flew over and stopped at a low window. I saw a bald and obese man panting heavily in the window, whipping a thin and weak woman with a thick cane in his hand. Blood splattered everywhere, and a 2 or 3-year-old child was crying beside him. Helpless little hands were scratching in the air as if trying to stop but lacking strength. At the sight of this plump bald man, LV Han's eyes instantly turned red. Reaching out and grabbing the lower edge of the window, half of the wall was pulled out, and a brick kicked into the bald belly, causing white intestines to flow out. The fat man leaned against the wall and fell down, only exhaling but not breathing in. The woman stopped shouting for a moment, looked at the unfamiliar young man in front of her, and then looked at the chubby man lying on the ground. She jumped up with a loud voice, picked up a thick arm bolt, and hit the fat and big head on the ground, one after another. Lu Han did not stop, but stood in front of the child, half of his clothes stained red with blood and brain wash, blocking his body and vision. The thin and weak woman could no longer smash it, and the latch collapsed to the ground. A bag of scattered silver mixed with copper coins was thrown on the ground. Fluttering out of the room, no one said a word throughout the journey. This chubby guy LV Han has never seen him before and doesn't know what their relationship is, but LV Han knows he deserves to die. There was still some time before dawn, and LV Han wandered around the chaotic streets of the southern city like a demon, slaughtering. A few strong men seemed to hear the sound of running past Lu Han from here. They turned around and glanced at Lu Han, then shattered into several pieces and collapsed on the roadside, splattering fresh blood everywhere. Lu Han took the initiative to attack, crossing streets and alleys, climbing over walls and entering households. Wherever he passed, blood flowed into rivers and corpses lay everywhere. On an empty field, stomping on the ground with his right foot, the thatched houses around him began to shake. A group of houses in the surrounding area gradually lit up with faint lights, and more than 40 people rushed over from all directions with sticks, knives, and guns. These strong men were startled when they saw Lu Han. The blue shirt was already stained with blood, and the ordinary face was dyed red and unrecognizable. One of the big men walked over with a knife, but before he could speak, it was LV Han who spoke first. 31, with a wave of his hand, the big man's head fell and he knelt down, spraying blood from his neck all over Lu Han's body. 30, a man beside him fell in response, with blood splattering around his neck. Everyone go up together. Kill him. A group of people rushed over. 25, 5 of them were instantly dismembered. 25 more people fell to the ground in response, while the others began to scatter and flee, but screams of agony continued to rise and fall. 10, 5, 3, standing in front of the last person, there was a woman in her 50s, curled up on the ground with a knife in her hand, shaking like a sieve of bran. Don't kill me, don't kill me. 1, on the way back, LV Han felt his body sticky and found a small river to take off his clothes and wash them in the river. The blood stains on the shoes are easy to handle, just inject spiritual power to remove the blood stains. The blood stains on the clothes can only be washed. If more spiritual power is injected, such worn-out clothes will shatter. After washing, carefully put the clothes into the storage bracelet, put on shoes, and fly back to the North City naked. Feeling incredibly happy. Returning to the Chamber of Secrets, he took off his shoes and cowered on the chair, staring blankly. Recalling everything from before, the excitement of killing someone for the first time, the warmth of blood splattering on his face, and the pleading gaze, was this really what LV Han wanted? No, this is not what he wants. What he wants is to kill them all and do what he says. That night, LV Han dreamed of a child pouncing on a big brother and howling silently. On the side of flowing water. Beside ancient trees. Under giant rocks. In withered grass. Where the heart rests. Where the heart is bound. Chapter 5. First battle defeat, life and death others 1 moment of thoughts. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lu Han began his life of meditation and cultivation during the day, and disguised himself as a murderer at night. Did you hear that more than 40 people died in the southern city yesterday? Do you think it was done by ghosts? Asked Lu San. I don't think so. Ghost people usually only kill people from the Immortal Sect, not civilians, and only kill 1 or 2 people at a time, unlike his handwriting, Lu Si replied. Who do you think it could be? 400 or 500 people have already died in the southern city in the past half-month. I heard it was done by a skinny man with blood all over his body. Isn't that just a ghost? Lu San still firmly believed in his own opinion. What do you want those people to do? This is Beicheng and it doesn't matter to us. Go patrol over there. Old Lu scolded the two who were chatting. Lu Han listened to 3 servants talking in the secret room and smiled at the corners of his mouth. 400 or 500. Too little to say. At least nearly 1,000 people have been killed in the past half-month, but it's still far from enough. Later, a legend spread in the southern city that a bloodthirsty Skinner would kill at night. It has become a powerful tool for women who do not return to the city to scare children into not sleeping. This is the sequel. It's night, seeing the southern city again. Because LV Han's clothes can no longer be washed, they are now covered in dark red. The moonlight tonight was not very good, and looking at the several dismembered corpses around him, LV Han's mood was calm as water, and he had already lost the excitement of killing someone for the first time. Suddenly, the sound of breaking through the air came, and LV Han hurriedly dodged with his feet. Swipe 3 gray lines back and shoot towards the person in the air. The person in the air let out a cold snort, and 10 small swords appeared out of thin air, each 1 foot long shining with dazzling silver light, flying 3 gray lines of LV Han. A middle-aged man in a blue shirt was standing with a red flying sword suspended in mid-air, looking down at Lu Han on the ground. 10 silver swords were spinning non-stop beside him. The middle-aged man made a decisive gesture without asking a question, and 10 small swords flew towards LV Han in unison. With a wave of his hand, Lu Han saw a half-brick black book floating in front of him. As soon as the black book opened, dozens of pages flew out and stood side by side, forming a wall blocking Lu Han's body. 10 small swords hit the paper wall with crackling sparks, but they couldn't break through. The person in the air snorted coldly, and the finger code changed. The small sword bypassed the paper wall and shot towards LV Han. Lu Han's heart twitched as the paper wall quickly returned to its cage and wrapped him inside, forming an egg. After another round of crackling sound, the paper egg remained intact, but Lu Han knew he had already used 90% of his spiritual power on the egg. I underestimated you for the power of just a piece of paper. The middle-aged man also didn't expect such a scene to occur. 10 flying swords gather together to form a cone, rotate and gather into a point, then tie it onto the paper egg. Lu Han saw in the egg that a piece had already been indented on the surface. Suddenly, I heard 3 crisp noises outside. Kid, your little measurement has long been. Suddenly, the sound came to a sudden halt, followed by the sound of metal falling to the ground with a crackling sound. Lu Han raised the corner of his mouth and waved his hand to open the paper egg, but the scene before him was unexpected. I saw the person in front of me holding 4 pages in one hand, with a small sword pointing towards LV Han's eyebrows. He looked at LV Han and said, I've seen through it long ago. The other party was able to see that the first 4 pages they flew out of were not 3, which was indeed unexpected for LV Han. But what surprised him even more was that a knife appeared gently in front of the middle-aged man's neck from the darkness, as if he had not noticed it at all. Then his neck was slashed open, and blood sprayed all over LV Han's body. His incredulous gaze tried hard to look behind him, but his neck was uncontrollably hanging down, and the corpse fell. The small sword pointed at LV Han's eyebrows also fell to the ground with a clang. Lu Han looked around without a single person. It's not suitable to stay here for a long time. Put the middle-aged person storage bracelet and the small sword on the ground into your own storage bracelet, and then peel off your clothes. Cut the body into several sections and throw them on the roadside, looking like one of those people. Returning to the secret room in the North City, LV Han curled up in a chair. Still being targeted by the people of the Immortal Sect. This is the first real battle of life and death, and I lost. This person's strength should be higher than mine. If it weren't for that knife in the end. That knife is a foreign object, with teeth on one side and a blade on the other. A blade that's over a foot long is a weapon for close-range killing, LV Han thought. There are already few foreign objects in the field of swords, and there is only a double-edged giant sword that is over half a person tall and is kept in son Fugui's house. A few years ago, when I visited his house, I met him. Son Fugui said he brought it back decades ago from a withered bone in a valley. With a tremble of his hand, a pile of flying swords appeared in front of him. 2 fingers are 1 foot wide and 1 foot long, which looks much better than the Skylark sword. Trying to activate spiritual power only managed to barely resist one. Since it has been decided to replace spiritual objects with foreign objects, these things are already useless to LV Han. After getting into the storage bracelet, I picked up the person's storage bracelet and casually shook a pile of things to form a table. Gold and silver clothes are useless, and some strange minerals and a silver rune paper seem to have some value, so they are put into their storage bracelet. I also found a register, a thumb-sized red crystal and a jade plaque with the words Wang Kaiyang written on it and the words, Imperial Treasure, on the back. There is no other object left in the cultivation method book of, the realm of imperial objects. Opening the roster and flipping through it, there were only names of people and the realm of cultivation. On the 3rd page, I saw the name of Wang Kaiyang, and the realm behind it is in the realm of imperial objects. Turning to the 1st page, Ishan's name comes first, and his realm is to transform things. He is his master. The second one is 1,000 miles away, where the realm transforms into the beginning of things. The third one is based on the orange, which represents the beginning of the realm transformation. Next up is the realm of imperial objects, with only 2 chapters and 18 people, and 10 chapters and 100 people in the realm of chi and objects, and then there will be no more. The Immortal Sect is known as the first sect with tens of thousands of disciples. Why are there only over 100 people above the Chi Wu realm, and the rest are ordinary people who have not even reached the Chi Wu realm? Lu Han was taken aback and thought that the lowest level for tens of thousands of people was the realm of Chi and matter. However, he didn't expect that he could rank in the top 20 of the Imperial Material Sect. But there is no LV Han in the list of 18 people. It's not the latest ranking, what's more interesting is seeing a few familiar names. They are all the names of some wealthy merchants and tycoons in the city. This is probably the ranking from many years ago. It was only 20 years ago that the Imperial Wu sect was established, and it was not surprising for them to worship beginners at that time. Perhaps it was just like us now. Lu Han smiled bitterly. After opening the realm of imperial objects and practicing martial arts, LV Han suddenly realized that this book was different from his own. Although his own book also had the essence of practicing martial arts mnemonics, the key points were very vague, with many words such as understanding and feeling passing by in a flash. Not only did he not have this book in detail, but also the thickness was much different. Wang Kaiyang's book not only explains the direction of Qi's movement, but also subtle changes in the release of Qi, 100 meridian atlas of meridians and acupoints around the body, and even difficult QA and dialogue explanations from senior experts. Master, do you want to play with me to death? This may be the true cultivation technique of Qi Wu Jing. Why did the master give me an edited version? Has the Qi Wu Jing also been edited? At this moment, the master plummeted in LV Han's impression. When I said they were both in the realm of imperial objects, I barely managed to hold on to one, but he managed to hold on to 10 at the same time. The difference is too big. No, you can't doubt the master. The master must have his reasons. Yes, I will go find the master tomorrow and ask him clearly. No, this will expose the murder case. What should we do? Grandpa, where are you? Come back and give me an idea, murmured Lu Han. It was night, and we arrived at the southern city again. You can't be defeated by small setbacks, just run when you encounter them next time. After dozens of people, LV Han stood in the pool of blood feeling happy. Are you happy? With a wave of his right hand, LV Han shot a gray line towards the direction of the sound, and when he was 1 inch away from the person's neck, he was gently gripped by 2 fingers. Lu Han stamped his feet and was about to step forward. Don't get excited, I'm not your enemy. He was only 1 zhang away from LV Han, but LV Han didn't notice at all. If there was a sneak attack, he would definitely not be able to escape. Do you really like cutting pages? With a flick of his hand, he returned to LV Han's storage bracelet. The person was of medium build, dressed in yellow and green clothes with bulging foreign objects. A piece of leather armor, foreign object. Short knife, foreign object. The shoes, foreign matter, are actually the same as those of Lu Han. A wooden mask worn on the face is quite ordinary. As he spoke, he lost a mask and came over. Lu Han held it in his hand and said, "No one here will know me." "Wear it, what if there is one?" Looking down, it was indeed an ordinary wooden mask. After wearing it on his face, he felt a chill around his neck, and the person whispered in his ear. "Including yesterday, you have already died twice." Lu Han was aroused, and the masked man was holding Lu Han's neck with one arm behind him, while the other held a short knife and placed it around Lu Han's neck. LV Han stood there, neither avoiding nor resisting, letting his knife rest around his neck. At this moment, he let go of his hand and flashed a few yards behind LV Han. LV Han took a deep breath and turned around. "What do you mean?" "I just want to tell you, first, don't trust anyone, second, trust me." Are these 2 sentences contradictory? You Wu Shu, but he only travels extremely fast in the shadows of low houses. A few times he didn't move, and LV Han couldn't find him. And Lu Han floated confidently in mid-air, following behind him. Half an hour later, 3 white shadows rushed towards Lu Han. "Who, what are you doing?" The 3 of them were all in a state of chi and matter, and before they could react, a black figure slanted out from behind them from a corner. Holding a knife in his right hand, the first knife broke one person's back neck and plunged into the second person's back of the head. The third person was about to strike the throat with a knife from his left hand, and the knife that pulled out the back of the head plunged into the third person's face. It was immediately pulled out and hidden in the darkness before these 3 people collapsed one after another. Most importantly, there was no blood splattered on his body. The style of this flowing body technique is characterized by a one-hit kill effect that does not drag mud or water. What is your relationship with LV Zimu? Why don't you call him Grandpa? Lu Han was startled in his heart. The hand wearing the storage bracelet clenched slightly. This is not a place to speak, come with me. Half an hour later, the 2 of them sat down on a huge rock on a deserted riverbank. Now you can say it. He sighed and whispered. Do you still remember this place? Lu Han looked around and was immediately taken aback, murmuring. On the side of flowing water. Beside ancient trees. Under giant rocks. In withered grass. Where the heart rests. Where the heart is bound. Slowly turning his head, he had already taken off the mask from his face, and tears silently flowed from Lu Han's eyes. Is that you? It's me. Everything starts from 20 years ago, when LV Zimu and Dong Tianxing stood side by side in the city of Fugui, and the Imperial Household Department had not yet been established. Dong Tianxing Ziqi Association not only has various niche businesses, but also has nearly 1 million members. LV Zimu also had nearly 1 million miners under his command, occupying major mining forests in the surrounding areas. This makes the barbarians a bit restless. It's okay if the two families don't get along, but these two families are as close as brothers. The then great elder of the barbarian tribe, Mo-Chi, personally invited two old men to demand a reduction in power. Helpless, Mr. Dong transferred a large number of elites from the meeting to join the legitimate business, and quietly broke away from the Ichi meeting, slowly fading away. Without the anger of the main staff and elite leaders, one will completely become a bad group. And the base is located in the southern city. With his intelligence, Mr. LV greatly improved the methods and equipment of mining engineering, greatly improving efficiency and reducing a large number of personnel. And some of these personnel joined the Southern Cities Ichi Association without any work to do, which quickly grew. Mr. LV's miners mostly come from the southern city. Those without families live a happy life on the front line of the mining site every day. Those with families transport the money earned from mining back to their wives and children's hands in the form of bodyguards. After all, the distance between the southern city and the mining site is too far. The main livelihood of the Southern City Ichi Association is to extort the wives and children of these miners. Secondary business activities include kidnapping, extortion, and robbery. In this era of no government, Mr. Dong stopped and Mr. LV's mining site was far away, making the southern city truly a bustling world. 10 years ago, early spring was warm and still cold. Near a mining site in the LV family. Grandpa, what do you think this is? 4-year-old Xiao Lu Han grabbed a red crystal in one hand and a handful of wildflowers in the other and ran down a mountain slope. Oh, Han Air is really amazing. This is dragon crystal stone, which can make amazing treasures, said Lu Han's grandfather. Can I also create it? LV Han asked, holding a crystal stone in his hand. You want to learn, I'll teach you. Lu Han's grandfather was quite happy, and his grandson's progress was a good thing. Okay, don't learn now, go back and learn. Grandpa. Butler Chuanfu ran over. Whispering in Mr. LV's ear. It's so troublesome. I understand. I'll go down personally, Chuanfu. I'll take Han Air back first. Mr. LV feels that things are not going well. Yes, sir, Chuanfu replied. Han Air, Grandpa has something to do. Can you and your uncle go home first and wait for Grandpa? Mr. LV discussed with Mr. LV Han. After all, taking him out to play was agreed upon in advance. It wasn't long before this started, and he had to leave first, which was quite unreasonable. Han Air doesn't want to go back, Han Air needs his grandfather to bring a gift back. LV Han neither wants to be obedient nor wants a gift, which is a bit excessive. Han Air, be obedient. How about waiting for Grandpa to come back and bring you a bunch of dragon crystals? Mr. LV finally used his trump card, bribery. You must keep your word. LV Han agreed instantly this time. Well, keep your word. Hashtag Uncle Quan, what did my grandfather do? On the way home, LV Han sat in the animal cart and poked his head out of the window. Master, he has very important things to do. Obviously, Chuanfu only listens to reports from others, and he is not very clear about it. When will you be back then? LV Han continued to ask. Me too. Who is that? A shout shattered the calm. The butler Chuanfu pushed back the head that Xiao Lu Han had poked out. Soon, the sound of killing could be heard all around. What's wrong with Uncle Quan? Little Lu Han sat inside the animal cart, feeling the car body constantly shaking. Young master. Sit well in the car, another servant shouted loudly. After a moment, the beast cart shook violently a few times, and the sound of battles around it also stopped. Let's see what it is. A stranger pulled LV Han out of the car. A child. Don't you have any money, Jia Gui? If you peel off the clothes on the ground, you can still sell them for some money, and you also peel off the clothes on this child's body. It's the leader of Xinxia, agreed a thin subordinate named Fugui, who combed his hair separately. Dare, do you know who I am? Xiao Luhan shouted angrily, not afraid. Because he saw the body of butler Chuanfu lying beside the car. Pa! I don't know who went up and slapped Xiao Luhan in the face, woo. After all, children are children. A certain place in the southern city, child, can you tell me whose family you belong to? I'm hungry. Xiao Luhan, who was wearing a burlap, didn't even glance at him and said with a slightly swollen face. Child, it's been 2 days, won't you say anything else? Another middle-aged man named Xinxia, who was sitting in a chair, said with a fine eye. I'm thirsty. LV Han still went his own way. Here, let's eat. Jia Gui took out the food from the package. I don't eat stones. Lu Han clearly hadn't seen such rough food before. This is Mantu. Boss, there is no news from the North City. It has been lost for 2 days and nothing has happened. Why don't you tear up the ticket? Jia Gui was worried. No way, the later part of his life's wealth and fortune will point to him. Child, don't you tell me which family you belong to? Xinxia asked again. Not to say. LV Han still stubbornly insisted on his viewpoint. Wait a little longer. Xinxia was speechless and couldn't play too seriously. If you hit it a few more times and it dies, it will break down. 3 days later. Boss, good news. I know whose family it belongs to. I haven't waited for 5 days in vain. Jia Guixing rushed in. Who owns it? Xinxia asked. The LV family in Beicheng. Jia Gui appeared very excited. Which Lu family? Xinxia continued to ask. That LV family. Jia Gui was somewhat puzzled. Is that really it? Xinxia asked again. Jia Gui nodded fiercely. A crisp slap rang out, and Jia Gui covered his face and turned twice before falling to the ground. It's his mother. Good news. Xinxia trembles with excitement. Boss, send this child's personal belongings over. I have already thought of a ransom of 50,000 taels. Jia Gui stood up from the ground and said 2 steps forward. Where are the children's clothes? Xinxia sat on the chair, holding her head in one hand and didn't even glance at Jia Gui. It's sold, Jia Gui whispered. Papa. It was another loud slap in the face. How about cutting off one ear? Jia Gui covered his face with one hand and put forward a new suggestion. Pa. Ah. Jia Gui covered his face with both hands and turned around in place, then said. How about we send it back and say it was picked up, maybe we can get a reward of several hundred taels. Ha ha ha, this suggestion received 2 slaps in the face. Jia Gui fell silent. If it were really that LV family taking some risks, it would be worth it. Find someone who can paint, Xinxia whispered, rubbing her forehead with one hand. Boss, we don't have anyone who can write in our society. Where can we find someone who can draw? Jia Gui clearly didn't understand Xinxia's intention. Then go look outside, Xinxia roared angrily. Okay, please don't hit me, Jia Gui shouted as he ran out. After a while, you can write. Xinxia asked. Yes, big brother, replied an 11 or 12-year-old boy. Call the boss, Jia Gui corrected beside him. Okay, big brother. Write a word for me to see, Xinxia said. Okay, big brother, I've finished writing it, big brother. It was written in a moment. What are these 2 words? Xinxia asked. Big brother, the young man replied. Everyone was speechless. Come on, draw a child and follow him. It's not like hitting you. Jia Gui appeared very enthusiastic. Okay, big brother. Don't move, I'll hit you. Hey, don't draw that rope on your mouth. LV Han was tied to a stool and twisted back and forth, with a rope on his mouth. Okay big brother, yes big brother, the young man agreed lightly. Call the boss. Hashtag North City LV Mansion Main Gate. Bang 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 bang. Big brother, respect me. Xinye's mouth was a bit awkward. Take the back door for begging, the servant said, glancing up and down at the visitor. Wait a moment, take a look at this first, said Xinye, taking out a piece of paper from her pocket and handing it over. The servant opened it and took a glance. Come in and tie it up, keep an eye on it, don't let him run away. The servant grabbed half of Xinye's yellow shirt and pulled him in through the crack in the door, pressing him down to the ground. LV Family Hall, unbind, sit, serve tea. Mr. LV sat in the main seat, cross-legged leisurely sipping tea. Mr. LV, I'm here today. Xinye was just about to explain his purpose when he interrupted the conversation. Aren't you afraid of death? Mr. LV put down his teacup and asked with a slanted gaze at Xinye. I didn't plan to go back alive. Xinye felt relieved and changed what she wanted to say. She picked up a cup of tea and savored it carefully. You have the courage, old dong, what do you think? Mr. LV chuckled. How can I see it? Just kill it. A person turned out from behind the screen, and it was Dong Tianxing. President, you're also there. Xinye quickly stood up when she saw Dong Tianxing. If you still know me as the president, it would be easy to handle. If you keep the money, take it away. Dong Tianxing didn't hesitate to make the decision for Mr. LV. You're joking, look, it's not on you. Xinye playfully patted her body. Draw a picture. Mr. LV stopped talking nonsense. 5 million. Find Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com, Xinye replied. Okay, everything in the courtyard is ready, just wait for you to come. Choose one yourself. You can take both of them. Mr. LV seemed to be waiting for him to say. Thank you very much, I know how to eat a few bowls of rice myself. Xinye is a smart person who won't do things beyond his planned scope. 10 days, bring it back, otherwise it will destroy you, Mr. LV said fiercely as he put down his teacup. Okay, just don't follow me, Xinye agreed happily. Young man, how could I have left you behind in the first place if you were so calm in front of us two old guys? Dong Tianxing felt a bit regretful as he saw that Xinye was a talented person, at least he had a lot of courage. You're being clumsy, President, Xinye just replied. I'm probably also lamenting that I was born out of time. The southern suburbs of Beijing, where are people? Here, big brother. Jia Gui leaned out from behind a nearby tree. Is everyone here? Xinye asked together, Jia Gui whispered as dozens of people poked their heads out from behind the grass. Move, Xinye gave a command. Dozens of people began to unload these 5 million taels of silver and divided into dozens of teams to sneak back to the southern city. You want to chase me with the rut marks? Xinye muttered to himself, obviously, all of this was within his planned scope, except for one thing. A loud slap echoed in the air. You bunch of trash, you can't even keep an eye on a child, let me go find them. Then came the roar of Xinye. A certain place in the southern city, who are you? Shaovan looked at the young man in front of him. Well, you can call me Big Brother, the young man smiled. Okay Big Brother. Chapter 6. Brotherhood. The youth was bound into the South City. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. In a huge room, there were more than 10 people sitting around, all of whom were men and women wearing half-length yellow shirts and riding on their backs. One by one, they frowned and glared at each other. You looked at me and I saw you arguing with each other non-stop. A middle-aged man with delicate eyebrows and eyes patted the table heavily and said. Su Blind, hand over the child, otherwise this matter will be big. The person named Su Blind said calmly. Xinxia, you intercepted the person, you collected the ransom. What's wrong? Now that the person is lost, they think of us. A yellow-faced man beside also agreed. You are too boring, his mother. A meat coupon will sell 5 million taels, or you will be the only one who loses 5 million taels. Damn it. Anyone who sees you will have a share. I want 1 million taels. Now you his mother find out the child. I will give you 2 million yuan. Are you all brainless, and you haven't talked about money for a few days? Do you think you can get another share if you steal the child from me? You are facing the LV family and the Dong family. A man with a scar on his face said, Xinxia, what does this matter have to do with us? Xinxia Lumei raised her eyebrows and pointed to her half-cut yellow shirt. I'm dead, the child didn't find me. Can you run away? As soon as these words were spoken, the entire room, which had just been noisy, fell silent. I don't know who said a word. If only the president were here. At the same time, the LV mansion in Beijing. Mr. LV, I have something to inform you about this time. Your grandson lost it to my subordinates, and I can't fulfill the 10-day contract. I don't want to hand over this subordinate yet. What do you think I should do about this matter? The speaker was a burly man with sword eyebrows and tiger-like features, his muscles twisted and intertwined, standing in front of Mr. LV in a half-sleeveless yellow shirt. Mr. LV squinted his eyes and suddenly thrust his right hand into a cone to grab the opponent's eyeball. The burly man seemed to have anticipated this move and hit Mr. LV's right forearm with his left hand, but only slightly changed direction. Mr. LV missed a single blow and grabbed the opponent's hair before pulling back. The person also reacted quickly, instantly pulling out a dagger and cutting off the hair that had been pulled up. He flashed and slid back, with a bright dagger lying across his chest. Lu, the old man, flew up and struck directly at the lower ear, and the person dodged on the side and returned a knife. The two of them started fighting in the hall. Mr. LV's moves are crucial, with no unnecessary movements in each move and form, and he is a martial arts skill that kills for the sake of killing. The yellow-clothed man, with a dagger in his hand, can even break down blocks and occasionally make a cut, but after 10 moves, he can only rely on the sharpness of the dagger to block Mr. LV's attack. Mr. LV grabbed the wrist holding the dagger with one hand and pressed it downwards. He kicked it with one knee and landed it on the handle of the dagger, releasing it. As soon as he flashed, he twisted the man's arm behind his back and kicked him on the knee bend. The man knelt down, and the other hand instantly pinched his throat from behind. You dare not kill me! The yellow-clothed man shouted loudly. He clearly didn't expect to be defeated by Mr. LV within a few dozen moves. Yes, I dare not kill you. If I kill you, Nanqing will become chaotic. How can I find my grandson? As soon as he finished speaking, his hand trembled and his eyeball was taken off. Go back and have people search door to door until they find it. In a few days, I will also send people into the southern city and get lost. Lu Zimu let out a snap and squeezed his eyeballs. The southern city Ichi meeting is at the helm. A burly man wearing an eye mask sat at the top of the table, staring coldly at the dozen or so people sitting in sequence below. The 10-day agreement has been lifted, and the most important thing now is to find the child. I'll ask again, who stole the child and hand it over now? I'll let bygones be bygones. There was a complete silence below. The burly man sighed and said loudly. At the command of the Qi meeting 16 halls, similar boys were arrested within the southern city area and identified one by Qingyi Jia Gui until they were found. After speaking, he pushed his hand and a pile of paper that was over half a person thick flew down in front of him. This is the painting and shadow design given by the LV family. Please fill me with pictures of the southern city. Remember, I cannot live to the point of injury. The survival of the southern city will depend on this time. Yes. The burly man sat on the chair, with one hand supporting his head, and when everyone below had left, he said softly, "You come out." A beautiful and seductive woman walked out from behind and gently sat beside the big man. The big man hugged her in his arms and asked, "Have you started preparing?" "We have already started preparing." "Is the president really going to do this? Isn't this something we can't do?" At the same time, the southern city boiled up. Shadowing graphics covered every corner of the southern city. Tens of thousands of congressmen gathered in various corners of the southern city to catch children. For a moment, the cries and sounds of killing in the southern city were incessant, causing panic and rumors among the people. Some said that Ichi would use the little boy as an elixir of life, while others said that Ichi would strengthen his strength and train the little boy from a young age. But all of this has nothing to do with this place. On a riverbank far away from the crowd stands a tall ancient tree, with a huge rock next to it. In the grass below the rock, there is a natural underground hole that leads straight to the ground. The hole is very narrow and only allows a child to pass through, and nothing can be seen when covered by the grass above. Below the underground cave is a spacious room, with piles of straw laid on the ground for warmth and comfort. 3 children of similar ages are sitting inside playing and frolicking. "Lu Han, is your family really that big?" a child asked with both hands open. "I'm not very sure, I think there should be one." Another little girl also interjected and asked. "Then your family should be very interesting. Can you drink congee every day?" "Well, no, my grandfather makes me drink a very bitter soup every day, and he always makes me move the stones in the yard." Lu Han frowned as if unwilling to recall these things. "So you and your grandfather worked hard for wealthy families, and I used to do the same. The vegetable root soup we drank was also very bitter." At this moment, a frail boy of 11 or 12 years old poked his head in from the cave entrance. "It's getting dark, let's all come out." 3 little guys happily climbed the ladder to the outside of the cave entrance, and these past few days have suffocated them. At this moment, the sky was already dark and there were no households around. "Stone, go to the place where you net yesterday and see if there are any fish." "Okay, big brother." The little boy named Stone readily agreed. "Yi, go check some firewood in the forest and come back." "LV Han, go with Yi and see if there are any wild fruits to pick." The girl named Yi replied. "Yes, big brother." "Big brother, I dare not go into the woods. It's so dark." LV Han glanced at the forest by the river and then turned to look at his older brother. The young man walked up to LV Han and bent down to stroke his head, saying, "What are you afraid of? Are you afraid of the beasts in the forest? It's dark in the forest, you can't see the beasts, and even the beasts can't see you. Don't be afraid, remember that darkness is your best companion from now on." Turning my head to look at the leaves. "Let the leaves take you, it's okay if you don't go far. What if I get lost and can't find it?" LV Han is still a bit worried. "In that case, you'll find a river and the tallest tree along the river, and under the big stone under the tree is your home. Let's go, let's go. I'll take you and you won't lose it." Yi watched as the stone walked far away and took Lu Han's hand into the forest. At night, by the riverbank, several children were eating grilled fish and drinking congee by the campfire. "Big brother, LV Han was kidnapped. How did you get here?" "I was also tied up, many years ago. It's just that I escaped later, but I can't remember where my home is anymore. I only remember that I can write and draw. Actually, you were all tied up and saved by me. After speaking, the young man took the grilled fish and pointed around, appearing very proud. LV Han said, they just want money. Once they pay, they will let us go. Big Brother put down the grilled fish and whispered, no, this is the southern city. They will be angry and demand ransom time and time again. After the last bit of money goes out, they will kill you. They are all a group of murderers who don't blink their eyes. All the children who are bound will be killed in the end. I have seen several of them with my own eyes, but they can't save them. What should we do? Grandpa will be very anxious. Then don't go back, don't you remember where your home is? This is our home, Big Brother is Big Brother, I am second brother, Yi is third, you are fourth. The stone shouted loudly. I'm still the fourth child. I don't want to be the fourth. When I was at home, all three of my older brothers in front of me died, and I had only one child at home. I don't want to be the fourth child. The older brother gently touched LV Han's head and said. It used to be before, and we wouldn't die. And you're wrong about the stones. Even if we wanted to have a home, it wouldn't be in the South City. This is a hopeless place, and I think in a few years, when you grow up a bit more, I'll take you three to the East City, the West City, and even further places to see the world outside of the South City. Is it Beijing? Yi asked excitedly. In Ye's understanding, Beijing is a paradise-like existence. I also want to go to Beijing, but it's not the end point. I want to see the outside world, not the outside world. The young man felt a bit melancholy, and he didn't know if he had the ability to realize this dream. To achieve one's ideals, one must first have money. I want to find a wealthy family in Dongqing and become a servant. When I have saved enough money, I can go further. I can write, so there should be many people who want me. Big Brother, is writing important? Of course it's important. Being able to write means having a skill and an advantage that others don't have. Stone Leaf, are you two slacking off? LV Han, tomorrow you will learn to write with them. Since then, the important idea of writing and a dream of going out to see the world have been firmly engraved in LV Han's small soul. So, during the day, the three children were learning to write in the underground cave, while the older brother continued to sneak around in the slums, occasionally bringing back a chicken. At night, three children were killing chickens and eating fish by the river, listening to their older brother talking about the events that happened every day. How to bully the weak and fear the hard, how to compromise, how to take advantage of small gains by sneaking in, and the heroic deeds of sneaking attacks behind the scenes. If you don't be cruel to others, you will be bullied. At the same time, you should be smooth in dealing with things and not force yourself. This is also the way to survive in Nanqing. Time passed day by day, and LV Han learned one thing by the riverbank, which was cruelty. Is this also taught by Big Brother? This is all for survival. Lu Han initially dared not kill fish, but later he only spent about 10 days killing chickens and rabbits without blinking his eyes. Later on, neither Stone nor Yi dared to see LV Han killing the rabbit. He stabbed and stabbed him to death, leaving his face covered in blood. He could even turn his head and smile at them. All of this is for survival. It's not easy to survive in this southern city, and cruelty is also an important skill. 4 months can be said to be long or short, but it is enough to change the values of a 4-year-old child. He regards everything about his older brother as his learning goal. Big Brother, Stone and Leaf are Lu Han's brothers and sisters. LV Han is the only child, which has given him more care and love. He is not lacking in the love and care of his parents. Even if he does something wrong, he doesn't need to be punished, and Grandpa's indulgence is boundless. There is no lack of friendship among friends, and even other emotions sprout in the midst of laughter and playfulness. But the only thing he lacks is brotherhood. Lu Han always feels disappointed as he watches his friends being surrounded by his older brothers and sisters, as well as his younger siblings, coming home for dinner. In the blink of an eye, the few buddies who were still there just now were only himself. He also hoped that someone could touch his head and tell him that Mom called us to eat, but this was just a luxury hope. Now LV Han has someone named Brother, who will always stand by his side. He can play around, preach, punish, and laugh. Although life is difficult, still happy. Finally, someone can touch his head and tell him it's time to eat. This is irreplaceable. 4 months have passed, and all the boys and girls around 3, 4, and 5 years old in the southern city have been caught clean, and Mr. LV has personally witnessed each one. Thousands of children are locked together, although crowded, they can have enough to eat every day, much more comfortable than they struggle outside to make a living. Mr. LV, with 8 sub-hall masters kneeling in front of him, and 2 people standing behind him, one is Dong Tiansheng, and the other is a middle-aged man dressed in a blue Taoist robe with a fairy-like demeanor. He is the head of the Imperial Wu sect, leaning against the mountain. 4 months ago, Mr. LV and Dong Tiansheng, along with hundreds of people from Yishan, arrived at the southern city Ichi Hui Hall and were instantly surrounded by tens of thousands of people, unable to escape. The leader is the one-eyed president. The Taoist Yishan was not polite either. He stepped on his flying sword and soared into the air. With a swing of his large sleeve, dozens of small flying swords flew out of his sleeves, spinning in front of him a few times before shooting towards the surroundings. The people below were all stunned, who had ever seen someone who could fly. The flying sword is like chopping melons and vegetables wherever it goes. The hundreds of others who followed were also experts, and they managed to scatter and flee tens of thousands of mobs. In the chaos, the one-eyed president and all 8 hall masters died. The hall masters never understood why tens of thousands of people could not defeat these hundreds of people until their death. But the main force of this melee was not these few hundred people, but one person leaning against the mountain, with flying swords under their feet and a vast expanse of rosy light. The area they passed by was littered with corpses. With the power of one person, thousands of people were killed to intimidate the entire audience, which also laid the groundwork for the later Emperor Wuzong Zhuangda. Mr. LV, I found another one. A young man walked up to the hall and bowed, saying. LV Zimu closed his eyes and let out a long sigh, saying. Let's go, take a look. Mr. LV is now most afraid and most eager to hear this news. After occupying the headquarters of the Southern City Ichi Association, they began to arrest 4-year-old boys and girls on a large scale. The old man has to count hundreds of people every day, and over time, in 2 months, he has gone from counting hundreds of people every day to not seeing a single person for a few days. The old man's heart grew colder and colder. Later, he increased the search area, including lakes, forests, and swamps, which used to be uninhabited places. Now, he would not let go of them. Even so, he could only find 1 or 2 people every day, each time a hope, and each time a disappointment. A little boy sat there, his disheveled hair blocking his face. Mr. LV squatted down and personally brushed away his hair, sighing and feeling disappointed again. Looking back, a hall master with a scar on his face walked over. Mr. LV didn't turn his head back and punched his face with a backhand. The helmsman with a scar on his face was directly knocked off, his body turned a few times, and he fell to the ground. The other halls quickly knelt on the ground and kowtowed their heads when they saw it. Dong Tianxing took a step forward and said, Brother LV, let's just look for it again. Next time, we'll definitely. Are you also surnamed LV? Dong Tianxing's words were interrupted by a childish voice. The word, also, indicates that the child has seen another person surnamed LV. LV Zimu squatted down trembling. Just as I was about to speak, I heard the little child say. I know LV Han. LV Zimu said in a trembling voice. I'm from LV Han. Grandpa. Lu Han said his grandfather will definitely look for him. This child is just a stone. Just now, Shi saw the person whose head had been hit flying, wearing a half-cut yellow shirt, clearly a bad person with a strong will. However, this tall old man, wearing a long blue cloth shirt, was clearly not in the same group. The one who could kill the bad person was a good person, and his surname was Lu. Could it be Lu Han's grandfather? The small brain of the stone was spinning rapidly, deciding to take a gamble. He won the bet. Half a day ago, in the cave by the river. I'll go out and pee, don't you two move. LV Han pointed to the broken earthenware jar next to the wooden stick in his hand. Big Brother said, the investigation is tight now. You're not allowed to go out during the day, so just pee there. Stone Road. The leaves are here, it's inconvenient. I'll be back soon. You two practice today's handwriting and don't be lazy. Lu Han doesn't know what's inconvenient, anyway, he always finds it convenient in the cave. As he spoke, the stone drilled out of the underground hole. Not far away, after finishing the convenience, I was suddenly hugged by one hand blocking my waist. How many brothers, come here, I found one. The stone shouted and struggled hard, and Yi and LV Han could hear clearly in the underground cave. Knowing that the stone has been caught. But they just curled up there, motionless because they knew the stone was not seeking help, but warning. They had already made an agreement that if anyone was caught, no one else could go to save them. Because it cannot be saved, only because of weakness. The voice gradually faded away, and LV Han asked softly. Has the stone been taken away? Leaves, curled up and lowered their heads. Big Brother said, as long as there's no sound in this hole, no one can find it. This stupid stone. There was a commotion on the streets of the slums. Master Jia, come and take a look, I've caught one. A few people bundled a child and strode over. Come on, let me see. It's not like it's sent to the headquarters. Hurry up. It was Jia Gui who was speaking. Jia Yi, why are you sending it to the headquarters after you say it's not true? I said it doesn't count, I have to let that old guy LV Zimu personally see it before it counts. Jia Gui furrowed his dog's oily beard and asked with a flick of his eye. I've been flipping through this for several days now. Where did you find this kid? By the river over there, the person raised their hand and pointed. Is it just him? He's the only one. I've looked for everyone on my end, isn't there anyone else? Jia Gui is a smart person. Don't be fooled and foolish in front of Xinxia, it's because he knows that every boss doesn't want a too smart subordinate. But before being under one's own hands, one must demonstrate one's intelligence. That place is already very remote. With such a small child, it's impossible for anyone to live there alone. There must be others. Take me to find it again. Beside the ancient tree and on the boulder, Jia Gui sat confidently commanding. How many of you go to the woods? How many people go to the grass? Have you seen that pile of black stones? Someone has baked something there. But no one knows that the person they are looking for is right under their feet. Big Brother, I've been looking for you for half a day. A shout came from a distance. Isn't this a kid who can draw? Come and sit down. Jia Gui is quite happy. I seem to be in a good mood. I won't go there. Brother Xinxia asked me to come over and tell you to come over. Hey, come up as soon as you're asked. I happen to have something to say to you. Helpless, he could only climb up the boulder. The stone is very large, and there are more than 3 or 4 people sitting side by side. The two sat side by side, with Jia Gui placing his hand on the person's shoulder, looking very affectionate. Suddenly, he asked. Do you think I'm stupid? The person was taken aback and didn't expect to ask such a question, unsure of how to answer it for a moment. You don't have to say it, I know it too. I've been pretending to be foolish under the hands of Xinxia for many years. I'm glad to see you today, and suddenly I feel like the opportunity to turn over has arrived. Before he could finish speaking, Jia Gui suddenly pulled out a dagger and pierced the man's palm, firmly nailing him to a stone. The backhand pierced through the other palm with another knife and was also nailed to the stone. Immediately, a scream sounded, and the surrounding subordinates quickly gathered back. I saw a person with both hands nailed to a huge stone, and blood flowed out a red line along the stone wall. Jia Gui still sat there with a big face and shouted. "What are you doing when you come back? Keep searching, keep searching." Everyone dispersed. Jia Gui stabbed his chest with another knife, which was not deep, but blood continued to gush out. Firstly, Xianxia is currently serving as someone else's grandson at the helm and doesn't have time to come and take care of me. After speaking, he stabbed himself in the stomach again. Secondly, as soon as I caught a kid, you came over and wanted to transfer me away. It's evident that there are other people around here. Thirdly, upon careful consideration, you had also seen that little brat before, but it was lost a few days later. Tell me, where did you hide him? After speaking, he stabbed himself in the ribs again. Blood gushed out, staining his clothes red. It flowed down the stone wall onto the barren grass at the entrance of the cave, then continued down the stems and leaves of the grass, finally dripping onto Lu Han's face. Lu Han really wanted to rush out and fight desperately now, but he knew very well what the consequences were. Not only could he not save Big Brother, but he would also implicate Yi. He stood there in a daze, recalling Big Brother's words, "Before was before, we wouldn't die." Yi, sitting at Lv Han's feet with her head in both hands, probably had the same idea as Lv Han. Weakness is sin. Don't come out, that's it. That's it. That's all. This is the last voice of Big Brother, with the roar of Jia Gui mixed in at zhaoshuyuan.com. Don't die, did I poke too deep? Damn it, I'm dead. Do you think if you don't say anything until you die, I won't know? The only place you can hear your last voice is under this rock and in this tree. There's no one hidden in the tree, so he's right under this rock. After speaking, with a loud bang, the body of the eldest brother was kicked off the stone. In Lv Han's eyes, everything in the world was no longer there, only the bright red and tattered clothes were left. With a loud bang, it seems that something inside Lv Han's body has been broken. A powerful aura burst out of the body. The leaves around me fainted in an instant, and the birds in the forest whizzed and flew all over the sky. More than 30 subordinates gathered back from around, and Jia Gui on the boulder felt a chill behind him, accompanied by a strong killing intent, as if some monster was about to emerge from under his feet. Jia Gui jumped off the boulder and stood with everyone, drawing a knife in his hand. He felt a little at ease and stared motionless below the boulder. Lu Han crawled out from under a boulder. Kneeling on one side of the older brother's body, holding onto his blood-soaked clothes with both hands, an invisible wave spread outwards from his body, causing the surrounding weeds to swing in a regular pattern. Lv Han's eyes were red as he shouted towards the group of people across from him. Sooner or later, one day, I will use your blood to dye this garment red again. I will kill all of you, leaving no one behind. I will keep my word. Well said. One was a tall, long-haired old man who fell from the sky and hit Lu Han's side. Remember your promise for today, and when you have the ability, fulfill it. After speaking, he turned his head and glanced at Jia Gui and others, saying, "Today, Grandpa, I'll make a sample for you." Chapter 7. Fighting strong enemies, brothers joining hands to cut off gold. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When I arrived, it was already a dead body on the ground. You cried so hard that you lost your sanity, but your hands still held onto your big brother's clothes tightly. Your grandfather could only untie his clothes. Bury your big brother thick under this boulder, turn this place into a forbidden area, and there will be no one smoking for 10 miles. Later, your grandfather carried you on his shoulders and killed you for 3 days and 3 nights in the southern city. At that time, people from the Dong family and the Immortal Sect also participated. They were all agreed upon, and as soon as they found you, they would immediately destroy the southern city Qi society. Those who killed the Qi society later dared not wear half of the yellow shirt. The entire southern city flowed with blood, and later the people of the southern city called this event the Happy Red May. However, after 10 years, your grandfather also disappeared, and this Qi society showed signs of rising again. Stone brother, why do you want to kill the people of the Wu sect? Let's kill them together. And where did you go later? Where is my grandfather now? And who did you learn the spell of restraining your breath from? Anyway, I have too many questions to ask you. The stone smiled and said, you have too many questions, and I will slowly answer them one by one. All you need to know now is a little bit. Nowadays, the Wu sect is no longer the same as it was 10 years ago. Remember one thing, be careful with the mountains. Stone Brother threw a booklet to LV Han, titled, The Mind Technique of Gathering Qi. You are already someone who has stepped onto the path of cultivating immortals. This original mental technique is very beginner, you can understand it yourself. This is also what your grandfather meant. The two of them bowed 3 times towards the boulder and agreed to continue their killing business tomorrow night. Returning to the Chamber of Secrets, I opened the Mind Technique for Constipating Qi and carefully read it. This mind technique had never been seen by LV Han before, but some of the recorded uses and principles of Qi were vastly different from those of the Imperial Wu sect. The main idea of Wu sect is to use one's own Qi to control objects. The method of restraining Qi mainly refers to how to hide one's own Qi and feel the Qi of others. Although the usage is completely different, the main idea is the manipulation of Qi, which reminds LV Han of another sect. Yuqi sect. Perhaps it's their mental method. 2 religions have the same root and origin, so learning them naturally has no obstacles. Although Wu sect can also feel the breath of others, the distance is pitifully small, and hiding one's own breath is completely non-existent. This can explain why Stone Brother put the knife on Wang Kaiyang's neck, but the other party didn't notice anything at all. At night in the southern city, LV Han's experimental field began conducting live experiments on the technique of restraining Qi, but the results were greatly disappointing. Those ordinary people with one breath cannot have any experimental effect. Even without using the technique of restraining Qi, they could not feel the presence of LV Han at all when walking behind them. As a result, LV Han slowly began to shift his focus to the disciples of the Nanqing Wu sect. After the Red May incident that year, a large number of members of the One Qi society took off half of their yellow shirts and mixed among the common people, making it difficult to distinguish, which created the illusion that the southern city One Qi society was annihilated. It has indeed made the southern city peaceful for several years. But later on, these members of the Ichi society who had taken off their yellow shirts put on blue Taoist robes and joined the Imperial Wu sect. In the Battle of the One Qi Society's helm, a Taoist from Yishan killed thousands of people and shook the entire scene, causing the Wu sect to have a great reputation in the southern city. A few years later, the Wu sect expanded its influence and recruited disciples, and a large number of members of the original One Qi Society joined the Wu sect. A few years later, those with better qualifications entered the realm of Qi and matter, while the vast majority were ordinary people who were slightly stronger than ordinary people. These people, carrying the name of the Imperial Wu sect, are engaged in a cunning activity. Control those members who are unable to even get started. He has become the true mastermind behind the scenes in the southern city. LV Han discovered the Qi Wu realm of 2 disciples of the Wu sect, and used the technique of restraining Qi to slowly approach under the cover of shadows. 10 zhang, 5 zhang, 2 zhang, 2 pages of books were already sandwiched between their fingertips. These 2 people were chatting face to face, hiding less than a foot behind one person. The person in front of them happened to block the other person's line of sight. I succeeded but also failed. Successfully approached the 2 of them here, but their strong bloody aura was exposed. As the person in front of him bent down, the person across from him shot a flying sword at LV Han's face. The flying sword is just an ordinary iron, but it's also a terrible thing to stick it in the face. A book leaf spun and flew out to block in front of the face, while the other one drew an arc and hit it. The person who bent down in front of him took out something and shot it into the sky. A meteor shot straight into the sky and exploded instantly. I missed the first shot without hitting, and the opponent even called someone. As expected, the stone's killing method is really not suitable for me. Since it is not suitable, let's use my style, LV Han thought. With a wave of their hand, the Bible appeared out of thin air, and the pages opened with a clatter. Dozens of pages scattered and danced around, and the two of them had to resist and were instantly submerged in the sea of books. Weakness is sin. If he had such skills back then, Big Brother wouldn't have died. Lu Han felt a wave of melancholy in his heart. At this moment, two powerful auras rushed towards LV Han. The realm of imperial objects. My heart trembled and I instantly thought of Wang Kaiyang. If it weren't for Stone's sneak attack from behind. Stone was around now, and with his chi-gathering technique, these two might not have discovered it. If the enemy is clear and we are dark, it may be a good opportunity. In an instant, these two people had already approached, both in their 50s wearing blue Taoist robes. The difference was that one was tall and thin, with 5 strands of long beard scattered on his chest. The other person is bald and has a very burly figure, with a big sword on his back. The tall and thin old man looked at the two broken corpses on the ground and then at LV Han, saying, "It seems that you have teamed up with the ghost man. Be careful, junior brother Lu. The ghost man may be nearby." The big man surnamed Lu drew his sword from behind and made 2 virtual cuts in the air. "Come on, it's just the right time to avenge senior brother Wang. Junior brother Lu, the ghost man's throat should not be underestimated. I will kill this person first, and you will take care of my back." After speaking, the two of them made a mistake with their flying swords and stood back to back together. I saw the tall and thin old man's wrist tremble, and a blue long sword appeared out of thin air. A blue talisman paper was pasted on the long sword, and a stream of water enveloped the sword, instantly condensing a thick layer of ice. The sword shook, and the ice shattered into countless small ice fragments, each carrying sword energy. Hundreds or even thousands of broken ice flooded the sky and earth. LV Han flew diagonally to the right and dodged. I saw those broken ice turning in the air and closely following behind. With a wave of his hand, dozens of pages formed a large shield in front of him, and the first wave followed closely by the second and third waves. Under my heart, dozens of pages formed a huge paper ball, spinning against the broken ice and throwing it towards the old man. As they approached, all the pages suddenly curled up in a corner and rolled over like a huge prickly ball. The old man sneered and instantly transformed into a phantom, and the burly man appeared in front of him. The heavy sword shone with flames, and a red talisman was pasted on it. With a single slash, the paper ball shattered. Dozens of pages turned into flying ash and drifted in the air, but more pages had already arrived in front of them, with a palm-sized black square flashing behind one of them. One was the flashing text appearing on the screen, and in an instant, a burst of white light from one corner of the black square flashed out diagonally into the sky. Lu Han instinctively turned his head and only heard the bearded old man behind him shout, "What's wrong?" The bald man exclaimed in surprise. "I can't see anymore." The big man wildly waved his giant sword, spreading flames in all directions but losing sight. The pitch-black night, the instantaneous flash of light can blind anyone. Is it another shape-shifting illusion? The tall and thin old man's ice sword was covered with water talismans, and a huge ice wall lay horizontally in front of him, resisting the attack of the pages. Lu Han's heart twitched as all the pages of the book lay flat on the ice wall, blocking the old man's entire view. The old man suddenly felt a chill under his feet, and his leg had already been cut in half. I saw a book page forcefully cut through a thin slit on the ice wall. "Brother Lu." The old man waved his sword and blocked the rotating page. He didn't know that LV Han had already concentrated all his spiritual power on the four edges of this small page. The pages outside the ice wall slowly floated down like ordinary paper, while sparks shone brightly inside the ice wall. Junior brother Lu, I can't stop it anymore. At this moment, a voice said coldly in the old man's ear. What do you think about letting a blind man look behind you? The old man could no longer answer, his neck had been cut off and tilted on his shoulder, and blood had painted the ice wall red. The ice wall collapsed with a loud bang, and LV Han was also exhausted and lying on the ground panting heavily. If you don't take action again, I won't be able to withstand it. The stone wiped the blood off the knife. The timing of the attack is very important. When it comes to fighting alone, I am not a match for either of them, so I can only wait for the opportunity to strike and kill. The stone defense technique is not particularly powerful. It can fly with boots, but its speed is limited, and it can only travel back and forth in low-altitude shadows. The knife never lets go, relying on the strength of the technique of gathering chi and the cover of the night to freely travel in the southern city. However, relying solely on these two factors can still be very dangerous when encountering a master of imperial weapons, indicating that the stone still has its own trump card. And LV Han can draw with 2.5 centenarians at the age of 14, is it because he has good qualifications? LV Han took a deep breath and waved his hand, holding 2 storage bracelets and 2 swords. Do you want it or not? The stone is still in its sheath. You keep them all, I don't need them. These 2 swords are obviously much more advanced than the Skylark sword. I don't want this stone at all. There must be other killer weapons that are even stronger than these 2 swords. Lu Han raised his hand to dismember the 2 people, but was blocked by a stone. That's it, make people think I did it myself, try not to expose you. Lu Han knew he was protecting him, what else could Lu Han say at this moment? Your white light was too eye-catching just now, said the stone. Lu Han was very proud and said, do you know? That one of mine is. The stone interrupted LV Han's words. Let's withdraw today and see you at the same place tomorrow. Okay, we'll all listen to you. Who made you the second brother? Hashtag in the secret room, LV Han lit a cigarette and rummaged through today's loot. Remove useless items such as clothing, gold, silver, and spiritual flying swords, and there won't be much left. The bald man is called Lu Wu, and he was in the middle period of the imperial examination. Sun Zhilian, a tall and thin old man, is in the middle of the imperial period. LV Han took a glance at the identity cards of the 2 and put them in the storage bracelet. A pile of ore and a silver cauldron look very exquisite. A pile of miscellaneous books and 2 volumes of The Realm of Imperial Objects, I casually flipped through them twice, and it is indeed the same as Wang Kaiyang's one. 3 red talismans, with ancient and fragrant fire characters condensed on them, and upon closer inspection, there is a faint gliding light. On 4 blue talismans, there is a water character written. With a raised hand, a light silver talisman paper appeared on the table, which was obtained from Wang Kaiyang. The character on it was Lei, only 1. LV Han knew that his phone needed to be charged, but there was no electricity here until he killed Wang Kaiyang and obtained this unique Thunderbolt token. After several experiments, I found some auxiliary combat functions, and the flash is one of them. LV Han picked up a red talisman paper and injected some air, causing a red fireball to appear swaying out of nowhere. LV Han was startled. This was his first time manipulating such a large fireball, and he tried to inject some spiritual power, making the fireball even bigger. A heat wave filled the secret room, causing LV Han to quickly withdraw his spiritual power. The fireball instantly disappeared, and the red talisman's color became much lighter. It's really difficult to control. Lu Han muttered to himself, recalling the battle just now. This silver lightning talisman was forcefully injected into the phone with lightning power, which enabled the phone's flash to emit such transparent white light. This was also thanks to the phone being a foreign object, injecting strong spiritual power to make it incredibly strong and able to accept the blessing of lightning power without damage. This is also due to LV Han's urgent manipulation error, injecting too much spiritual power to make the Silver Thunder Talisman appear somewhat dull. If we don't practice the control of Qi well, we can only use this unique Thunder Talisman 2 or 3 times and it will be exhausted. Put away a few talismans, hold a small white bottle in your hand, and write Yellow Dragon Dan on the note. LV Han thought to himself, this name is so familiar, it seems to have been seen somewhere before. LV Han dug out the window and searched through dozens of bookshelves, finally finding the record of Huanglong Dan in a book called Tai Yi Dan Fang. The record is very vague. There is everything from medicinal effects to formulas to refining methods, but the writing is very vague. I think a certain imperial physician who wrote this book has never personally refined the yellow dragon pill. LV Han roughly flipped through it, half happy and half worried. I'm glad that Huanglong Dan has the wonderful effect of increasing cultivation and transforming bones, but I'm worried that its refining method and medicinal material ratio are not very detailed. Although the required medicinal herbs are not very precious and cannot be returned to the city, ordinary pharmacies also sell them, but the years in the pharmacies are generally short and the medicinal power is not strong. Taking Sanwa grass as an example, it is just an ordinary herb, and this formula actually requires Sanwa grass with 40 years of medicinal age. You should know that the preciousness of a herb is mostly evaluated by its year. The longer a herb is aged, the greater its medicinal properties, and the more difficult it is to find herbs of the same age. And it usually grows on the rarely visited deep mountains, old forests, and cliffs. Nowadays, some pharmacies also specialize in cultivating some medicinal herbs, but these are commonly used and can be used for a short period of time. Some wealthy families also cultivate precious herbs that can save their lives in times of crisis, and the age of these herbs is usually not too long. After all, the Battle of the Broken City has only been 40 years since then. However, this does not apply to the LV family. Without returning outside the city, there is an endless wilderness and ancient land. 50 years ago, it was impossible to go out of the city to collect medicine. The biggest threat is the barbarians. The barbarians have lived on the outskirts of the ancient wilderness for thousands of years, making a living by driving animals and hunting, but they do not have the habit of collecting and planting medicine. In the eyes of the barbarians, traditional Chinese medicine is grass. This has led to an awkward situation where there are countless precious herbs on the outskirts of the city but no one goes to collect them. 40 years ago, in the Battle of the Broken City, the 4 major cities in the east, west, north, south, and north were completely destroyed, and the population who did not return to the city was reduced by about half. That was an era where even food and shelter were a problem, and no one would think of going out of the city to collect herbs. 30 years ago, the Wuwang city was basically built, and all the barbarian tribes in the wilderness and ancient land moved in. Is this also the peak era of dual dominance? Mr. LV selected thousands of strong individuals from the miners and provided them with specialized training on medicinal knowledge, team combat skills, and wilderness survival skills. After the training was completed, batches were sent one after another to the outskirts of the abandoned ancient land outside the city to collect herbs, in order to cover up the public and say that they were going out of the city to cut wood. In order to prevent the loss of medicinal effects, all herbs are transported into the city by living roots carried in trees, and then transplanted to a hidden location in the Wuxia mine with dedicated personnel to guard. Even the later Emperor Yuwu did not know. Later on, when the Emperor Wuzong became stronger and wanted to collect medicine, he could only use his sword to go to a slightly distant place in the wilderness. After all, that was not a territory that ordinary people could step on. Although the medicinal herbs there have greater medicinal properties and higher quality, they are also constantly in danger, with poisonous insects and beasts everywhere. Those who can go there to collect medicine are all experts from the imperial palace. In terms of efficiency, it is incomparable to the thousands of people who have been collecting medicine continuously for 30 years. These were all told to Lu Han by Mr. LV 4 years ago when he was about to leave. If it's useful, go in and take it, it's all yours. Grandpa's words still lingered in his ears, as if he had anticipated from 30 years ago that one day Lu Han would use these herbs and had specially prepared them for him. LV Han took a yellow dragon pill to cross his knees and meditate to dissolve the medicinal power. Zhaozhuyuan.com is truly a rare holy herb in the world. With its powerful medicinal power, LV Han felt that his strength had improved that night. The spider silk in the corner of the secret room wall is clearly visible. Without entering the study, the bookworms in the book are eating scraps of paper. In the courtyard outside, the sound of unknown crawlers crawling over the ground, and the footsteps of servants sweeping the floor in the distance are all incredibly clear. LV Han knew that this greatly enhanced his strength through the medicinal power of the yellow dragon pill, thereby increasing the perception range of the technique of gathering qi. This is a pill obtained from a master in the middle stage of the realm of imperial objects, and I am only in the early stage of imperial objects. I believe I can significantly improve my strength in a short period of time. At this time, there are still 2 months left until the 6th-month quarantine period. After dawn, LV Han dug out of the secret room and arrived at the non-entry room, starting to search in front of a bookshelf. I want to find a book that records the complete prescription of the yellow dragon pill, but it's not that easy. The elixir is the elixir, and even after searching through the bookshelf, he couldn't find it. However, LV Han unexpectedly discovered another prescription. Jin Sui Wan. A thin page sandwiched between an unknown ancient book, looking like it has been some time. At first, LV Han didn't pay much attention and just thought it was an ordinary unilateral party, but a small line below the unilateral party caught his attention. It can be taken together with the yellow dragon pill, and mutual gain is the best. This prescription provides a detailed description of the required medicinal herb's age, ratio, preparation method, and administration method, but only does not specify the medicinal effect. If this elixir is true, it is best to rely solely on being able to mutually benefit with the yellow dragon pill. This statement can assert that Jin Sui Wan is a sacred medicine of the same level as Huanglong Dan. But what if it's not true? Lu Han is not good at seeking medical advice and medicine. But without returning to the city, there are indeed people who are skilled. Chapter 8. Holy Hand Doctors, Medical Ethics Only Serve for Money. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Pop 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 pop. The sound of knocking on the door rang out, and a delicate young man wearing white gloves answered the door. The person who came was a young man in brocade, who was about the same age as himself. Behind him stood 4 servants. Not long after he first came to this gatehouse as a steward, the young man in brocade looked familiar but couldn't remember who it was. However, he saw that this young man was dressed in luxurious clothes, which showed that he was by no means ordinary. I dare not neglect to give a deep bow. May I ask the young master's surname? Gao. The young man returned a gift. The 4th young master of the LV family, LV Han, is preparing a special gift today to pay his respects to the Holy Hand Doctor, Mr. Su. The handsome young man was surprised. A few months ago, the name of the 4th young master of the LV family spread throughout the northern city. He also knew about the deeds of the LV Mansion's banquet in the northern city. Take the gift box and respectfully say. Wait a moment, let me know. Tell me what, sunny day, let senior brother LV Han come in quickly. A cute little girl bounced out from inside. The young servant named Qin Tian was momentarily taken aback, then dodged sideways. Aren't you in seclusion? How come you have time to come and see me? I also wanted to ask you, why didn't you go to school today? Did you skip class? I didn't have it. The master said that we were given a 3-day leave today due to something unexpected. Of course, LV Han knows what happened. Yesterday, he just died, and his 2 junior brothers must have gone to investigate the scene. The little girl who came was Su Ming'er, who was over 9 years old. This is the famous Su family in Beijing. 1,000 years ago, Su Zihui, the ancestor of the Su family, founded the imperial Wu sect. But Su Ming'er's lineage did not embark on the path of cultivating immortals, and it was precisely because of this that they managed to avoid the catastrophic disaster of 40 years ago. In the battle of breaking the city, all cultivators were destroyed, while Su Ming'er's grandfather, Su Yan, survived, becoming the only surviving lineage of the Su family. Starting to treat a large number of wounded with the medical skills diligently studied in the family. In that turbulent era of insufficient medical care, the existence of a doctor was extremely important, especially a top-level doctor. Su Yan was kind-hearted and his wife opened a small clinic in the East City to treat those poor people. In the turbulent era, everyone was poor, and Su Yan and her wife only charged for medical treatment and medication, while others simply gave them away for free when they looked really poor. Su Yan's reputation in Dongqing district grew stronger and she gradually gained the title of Holy Hand and Divine Doctor. The greater the ability, the greater the responsibility. More and more people are coming to see a doctor, and although the Su family has some wealth, they are becoming increasingly poor if they continue to donate like this. A few years later, my family was in ruins. Su Yan's wife finally fell ill from overwork at this time. After Su Yan's diagnosis, he urgently needed several precious medicinal herbs to treat his wife, but he didn't have the money to buy them. Su Yan and her 4-year-old son ran all over the eastern city, knocking on the doors of the rooms he had previously treated. After knocking through the threshold, all he got back was a "no money," because they knew he couldn't afford it. Finally, his wife died of illness in his own arms, claiming to be the strongest doctor in the city. A great irony. From then on, the strongest doctor who did not return to the city recognized the essence of human beings. He still runs a clinic and treats patients, but he starts collecting money, a lot of money. Poor people come to see a doctor with just one word: get lost. No rolling. Strike. After all, his ancestors were the founder of the creation school of the Wu sect. Although I haven't practiced immortality myself, I still have some skills in my hands. Those who are hit by 30.6 Tai Sui silver needles will be immediately executed. In that era without government, there was no one to care about the dead, let alone in front of the medical clinic. Later, when I moved to Beijing, I only treated wealthy businessmen and tycoons, and the fees were not cheap. Because of that incident, a doctor who desperately demanded money dared not offend the black and white sides of the city without returning. No one can guarantee that they will have no illness or disaster throughout their lives. If you offend Dr. Su, even if you are not sick, there will be some. This fine tradition has been perfectly inherited from his son. After all, he also witnessed with his own eyes the ugly faces of those people and the entire process of his mother's death due to poverty. But Su Ming'er did not inherit it. The environment can change a person. When Su Ming'er was born, the Su family was already a wealthy family, and Su Ming'er could not fully experience the pain brought by poverty. In addition to studying medicine diligently, inheriting family business. I still want to retrace the path of cultivating immortality that Su Zi, the ancestor of the Su family, returned to. Whenever Su Ming'er talks to her grandfather about medical ethics and the importance of serving the world, Su Yan's sigh always comes back. I thought the same way back then. This is Han Er's filial piety to Grandpa Su. Of course, LV Han knows the rules here. With a wave of his hand, a few servants brought the gift box, but in fact, LV Han didn't know what was inside the box. These were all sent by someone a few months ago, and he didn't even look at them. He just instructed his servants to pick out some heavy ones and bring them directly. Su Ming'er opened the gift boxes one by one, jumping and bouncing, and found the golden jade artifacts. As expected. Having seen it too much, Su Ming'er felt very uninteresting. Mr. Su smiled and stroked his beard, looking at these gold and jade objects, but they were very useful. Su Ming'er pestered LV Han to see his Skylark sword, but LV Han was helpless and shook his hand, causing the Skylark sword to fly in the air. Mr. Su knows that LV Han did not come to play with Su Ming'er this time. There must be something important to discuss. Warm channel. Tomorrow, go out and play. I have something to talk about with your senior brother LV Han. Su Ming'er jumped up and grabbed the Skylark sword dancing in the air. The tip of the sword dragged the ground, carrying sparks all the way out, shouting while running. I don't care what you say. I'll go out and try the sharpness of the spirit sword. Without looking back, he ran into the yard and started chopping down trees. LV Xiaoyu, what's the point of bringing me here today? Faced with a child who is 2 generations younger than him, a little friend is enough to prove that Mr. Su is very polite. He is confident that even LV Zemo himself will stand in front of him and give him 3 points. But this LV Han is different. He is already a cultivator, and his recent flying sword is enough to prove his strong strength. But today he demands that his posture should not be too low or too high, and should be considered as an equal as much as possible. Perhaps in the future, I will have a day to ask for help from him. A prescription appeared in front of Mr. Su. Mr. Su's Dan Fong lowered his head and watched. Is Huanglong Dan originally intended for this prescription? The Huanglong Dan prescription in Mr. Su's hand is the one with a vague prescription ratio. LV Xiaoyu really came to the right place. The accurate ratio of the Huanglong Dan formula is indeed with me. Just make it clear how much Mr. Su wants. Lu Han was delighted to hear that he knew. LV Xiaoyu misunderstood. Although this Huanglong pill is a sacred medicine, this prescription has been passed down, but there are both true and false. Your prescription is fake. However, 2 years ago, I gave the real prescription to the Imperial Household Department. Nowadays, only the Imperial Household Department can prepare it. Don't even think about it. Why is this? In fact, LV Han's heart was already clear, but he just pretended not to understand. Although the medicinal herbs required to prepare Huanglong pill are precious, it is not difficult for people like us to obtain them in this city without returning. The difficulty lies in the year of the required herbs. The minimum amount of herbs required for Huanglong pill is 40 years, and there is no upper limit. The higher the year of herbs, the stronger the medicinal power of Huanglong pill. However, currently, the most years of herbs not returning to the city are only 10 years. The herbs prepared with these herbs are useless. Only suitable herbs can be found in the depths of the wild ancient land. But only high-level cultivators of the Immortal Sect can go there to collect herbs. It is obvious that Mr. Su does not believe that the current LV Han is a high-level cultivator. So, in my opinion, the elixir of Huanglong Dan is a useless prescription. Suddenly, there was a loud noise outside the yard, followed by a huge object falling to the ground with a loud bang, accompanied by the sound of a large amount of debris falling to the ground. A group of servants were shouting outside, "Miss, are you okay? Don't worry about her, this child has been playing wild today." It must have been Su Ming'er who chopped down the thick tree in the courtyard and also collapsed a room. The courtyard was filled with chaotic smoke and dust, and various servants ran around. It's very noisy. Mr. Su waved his hand and flicked the dust off the bullet body, saying to Lu Han, "Little friend, come with me." In a study, Mr. Su walked up to LV Han with a prescription in his hand. Lu Han was about to take it, but to his surprise, Mr. Su picked up his pen and copied the sheet again on the table before handing the copied sheet to Lu Han. Lu Han was speechless, and the pile of gold and jade artifacts he exchanged for turned out to be a handwritten version. But it doesn't matter, his first goal has been achieved. "Mr. Su, since this is an abandoned square, do you have a similar level of elixir or a similar one here? Han Air can purchase it at a high price." To be honest with you, there are indeed sacred medicines of the same level as Huanglong Dan, such as Jinsui pill, Jichen pill, etc. They are all holy medicines that can increase power like Huanglong Dan, but the prescription has not been passed down and has long been extinct. Even if there is a demand for medicinal herbs, it is likely that they are not low. The second goal is achieved. Liu Han wanted to determine the true therapeutic effect of Jin Sui Wan from Mr. Su's mouth. As for the preparation method of Huanglong Dan and Jin Sui Wan, Liu Han is not worried. With a prescription in hand, following a step-by-step approach will always lead to success. Little friend, I have another heartless request today. You have a large collection of books that are not allowed to enter the study. I would like to borrow some books related to medicine from the study to have a look, may I? Liu Han secretly rejoiced in his heart, you old fox who desperately wants money. You exchanged thousands of taels of gold for a handwritten prescription, and now you still want to stay in my non-fasting room. See if I don't slaughter you. Although Liu Han was pleased in his heart, he showed a look of distress on his face. Not entering the fast is a forbidden area set up by my grandfather himself, where books and classics should not be easily lent out. However, little friend, if you have any requirements, it's okay to say so. Maybe you have a crush on Ming'er. It's easy to say, but when she gets a little older, I will understand. Su Lao, you misunderstood. Liu Han thought to himself that the old fox was always thinking of climbing the dragon and supporting the phoenix. Although the Su family is extremely wealthy and has face, they do not have many subordinates. Although they are both one of the 6 major aristocratic families in the city, they are still much worse than the LV family. Han Er's good books must be known by Mr. Su as well. I think most of them are passed down from our ancestors in this study. I know it's impossible to ask for them. Why don't I exchange 100 pharmacopoeias for a night of reading in Mr. Su's study? Mr. Su frowned, clearly not expecting that LV Han would make this request. After pondering for a moment or agreeing. But with certain conditions, all books in the study room must not be damaged, copied, or stolen. Liu Han readily agreed. The third goal is achieved. After chopping down a tree, crushing a room, and destroying several walls, Su Ming'er got tired from playing and went back to her room to rest, holding the Skylark sword on her own. I completely forgot that she borrowed this sword. Late at night, people are still. There is only LV Han in the study of the Su family. The books on the bookshelf are scattered everywhere. He only has one night, so it's impossible for him to watch it all. He can only skim through some vocabulary that he cares about. For example, Jin Sui Wan and De Chin Dan. Sure enough, there was nothing, but that was not his goal. The Su family is the only surviving descendant of the founder of the Immortal Sect, Su Zihui. Although most of the medical classics passed down from our ancestors are medical classics, there should also be some techniques for practicing martial arts. Although my family was once in dire straits, these books were worthless during that turbulent era. If it can't be sold, it's mostly kept. Many wealthy families in the northern city have secret rooms, where people are hidden in turbulent times and gold is hidden in prosperous times. And the builders of these secret rooms are exactly LV Zimu, the grandfather of LV Han. If it comes to the construction of secret rooms, the ingenious and intricate techniques of the mechanism are unparalleled. LV Han once asked his grandfather who he learned from. LV Zimu let out a light sigh. This is your grandmother's family's ancestral craft. Grandpa's mechanism is broken by his grandson, although it may be difficult, it is not entirely impossible. One of the difficulties is to find the hidden mechanism eye. Each mechanism has a mechanism eye, and if you break through this point, the door to the secret room will automatically open. It's not that the mechanism eye is difficult to find, but rather difficult to find. Some mechanism eyes are disguised as several books or an incense burner, which are the most basic. Some mechanism eyes are even in other rooms, or a large white wall that requires knocking on several fixed positions to open. But none of this can defeat LV Han. By gathering chi and releasing consciousness, one can see everything inside and outside the walls within 100 meters. The second difficulty is that opening the mechanism will make a sound of metal hinges rubbing against each other. Although the sound may not be loud, it can spread far in the quiet night, so it is necessary to find an opportunity. A person alone in the study will still make a sound and there will be no chance for anyone to come and check. For example, now. In the first half of the night, Lu Han's voice while reading was indeed somewhat exaggerated. Quickly flipping through the book with a rustling sound, occasionally reciting a few loud sentences, and then throwing them aside. Although Mr. Su felt a bit heartbroken, the agreement did not specify how to read the book, which was unimaginable. Think about the 100 pharmacopoeias that are about to arrive, endure them, and give an order not to disturb Mr. LV's reading tonight. After that, he will go back to his room to rest. The books on the table were still flipping through in the air, but LV Han dodged and entered a passage. The passage was not large enough for only one person to barely pass through, and the steps tilted downwards. Within a few steps, he arrived at a stone door and gently pushed open a small stone door, revealing a secret room in front of his eyes. Under the illumination of fluorescence, there was only one bookshelf in the small secret room, scattered with dozens of books. The thick dust on the ground indicated that no one had come here for a long time. It seems that Mr. Su really sold all his property back then. Lu Han stood in front of the bookshelf, carefully flipping through these dozen or so books. Books are all good books. For hundreds of years, the painstaking efforts of doctors from different eras have been concentrated on this small bookshelf. It's definitely not comparable to those outside. LV Han flipped through page by page, secretly memorizing page by page, searching for the ultimate goal of his trip. Do not enter the fasting room the next day. Lu Han carefully picked up the books in front of a bookshelf. I specifically selected 100 books of the most widely circulated and basic, medical classics, with a large publication volume, and packed them into a package. I ordered my servants to deliver them to the Su mansion. Thinking about the expression on Mr. Su's face when he saw these 100 medical classics, he wanted to laugh in his heart. It seems that even a person in his teens wouldn't come to trouble a child over this matter. 2 elixirs were placed on the table, and LV Han picked up a pen to copy the required medicinal herbs and years onto a piece of paper. I also specifically added some younger ones for experimental purposes. Carrying it in my arms, I arrived at a secluded place and got up to fly north. There is a ridge north of Beicheng. The ridge is 100 zhang wide and several tens of zhang high, with an unattainable length. There are walls on the ridge, 10 zhang wide and 100 zhang high, with an unattainable length. Without doors or stairs, it is beyond human labor to build. Obstructing barbarians for thousands of years outside the mountains. It actually does not belong to the foundation of establishing a city. Flip through the map provided in this book, overview of scenic spots and historic sites in Fugui city, and carefully identify it in the air by searching for the book garden www.zhaozuiyuan.com. A few years ago, when Lu Zimu was about to leave, he took Lu Han there once. However, at that time, he was walking on the ground. Now, Lu Han can't find the way in the sky, only knowing that it is a canyon sandwiched between mountains and walls, but it is difficult to find it in the air. Lu Han suddenly discovered that a small red circle had been drawn on a map not far from here, with 4 small characters written on it. The Land of Connection. The red circle is very light, and it's easy to overlook it if you don't look carefully. Curious, I flew over in this direction. Upon arriving at the place, LV Han was completely stunned. A crack that is tens of zhang wide and hundreds of zhang long is prominently embedded on the ground. Directly split the 100 zhang city wall into 2 sections. The surrounding city walls, which are several tens of zhang long, have all collapsed, creating a huge gap. Beyond the gap lies the desolate ancient land. Lu Han slowly descended, only to see countless huge rubble on the ground, with sword marks scattered all over it, indicating that this place had experienced a brutal war, and the bones of countless animals of all sizes were scattered all over the ground. However, a road was artificially cleared in the middle. It seems that this is the only connection between the city of no return and the wilderness. This broken map is really... For a moment, LV Han couldn't find any adjectives to describe this broken map. He had just flown in the sky for half an hour, but still couldn't find it. At this moment, LV Han suddenly came up with an idea and took off from the ground to the highest point he could fly. To his left was the city of no return, with 4 main cities in the east, west, north, south, and all visible. To his left was the pitch-black city of no hope, and to his left was a towering white mist. And to his right is an endless green wilderness, separated by a 100-foot-high wall. Standing high, one can see far. LV Han stood at the highest point, searching for the valley in his memory. Chapter 9. Character Chapter LV Han, Young LV Han. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. After the Red May incident, the LV family in Beicheng. Young LV Han began to prepare to fulfill his promise. But when he returned home, he found that all the servants in his family had disappeared, replaced by a group of young people, and he didn't know any of them. After asking his grandfather, he realized that after losing him, his grandfather felt that the servants in the family were indeed very old. In order to strengthen the vigilance of the LV family, all the servants of the LV family were specially replaced, from less than 30 to more than 10 now. These young people are all the confidants of Mr. LV. Each one is a master, not comparable to the previous servants. As for the original people, Mr. LV arranged for them to retire in a picturesque place. LV Han pestered his grandfather to study, learn martial arts, and seek revenge. It is good for children to be ambitious, but there must also be a process. Revenge is not something that LV Han can do now. Learning martial arts, although LV Zimu believed that his martial arts were indeed created for killing, LV Han was still too young to practice now, and the only thing LV Han could do now was to study. LV Han is very ambitious, remembering his elder brother's teachings that reading and writing are useful. Study hard, practice hard, and make rapid progress. To forge iron, one should take advantage of the heat and take advantage of the ongoing fire of revenge. The old man took this opportunity to teach LV Han another language, a writing system, but at that time, the young LV Han did not know that it was from another world. And the textbook is Lu Han's first foreign object, the Bible. Of course, this is Mr. LV's belongings, which are said to be the remains of one of his friends and are well preserved. 2.5 years have passed, and LV Han has been drinking his bitter medicine soup without interruption. When he moved the stones in the yard, his grandfather said, "Do you want revenge, young man? Drink medicine. Exercise." In the past 2.5 years, LV Han has already learned the words in the Bible. There are no problems with listening, speaking, reading, and writing, but the biggest problem is that they do not match the actual object. After all, the Bible is not intended for children's enlightenment and learning. Until Lu Han found his second foreign object, a thin book of exotic paintings. Although it is a brochure, LV Han's grandfather believes that it is a product promotion brochure for a large shopping mall. There are various types of items above, and the prices are marked below. This enabled LV Han to break down and combine the words he learned from the Bible and match them with the objects on the picture book. It is not surprising that he can recognize mobile phones, diamond rings, and glasses. After all, the information is limited, and a picture album is far from enough. So Lu Han's grandfather carried out a large scale book collection activity in the city of Fugui, and a large number of books gathered in the LV mansion, which was the earliest prototype of non-fasting. Having collected many books, there will always be 1 or 2 books from other realms, which has greatly helped LV Han's study of characters from different realms. During this period, Mr. LV did not stay at home with his studies every day, but came back to stay for half a month after 10 days of going out, without knowing what he did outside every day. Until Liu Han was 7 years old, Mr. Liu even threw him at the neighboring Dong family, asking him to teach him martial arts. However, the interval between his return was even longer, sometimes not seeing him for several months. Is there no problem with the friendship between two old men? So, at the age of 7, Xiao Luhan and 7-year-old Dong Xinwen learned the Xingyang Ichi technique under the personal guidance of Mr. Dong. The two children are of the same age and live and eat at the Dong family every day. Although there are differences between men and women, Mr. Dong seems to be deliberately making the two children closer and closer, as if he is looking at his future granddaughter-in-law. After all, only the LV family is in conflict with the Dong family, as they do not belong to the city. But it should be noted that the LV family is the only child, and all the family assets will ultimately fall on LV Han, while the Dong family has 10 grandsons who appear to have a prosperous population and many happy sons. When Mr. Dong kicks his legs, he may become chaotic. If the two families become in-laws, at least his granddaughter will have a worry-free life. Dong Xinwen was quite happy. He had been practicing martial arts for 2 years and found it boring. A companion fell from the sky. During the day when practicing martial arts, Dong Xinwen showed the demeanor of a young lady, being humble, respectful, and polite. From time to time, he also provides friendly guidance to the young junior brother LV Han. When we sleep together at night, we occasionally pinch and kick each other. After all, your child is currently at the Dong family and uses the Dong family for food and accommodation. If you hit you, you dare not report it. Even if it were to accuse Dong Xinwen of his gentle and elegant image in the eyes of others, no one would believe him. LV Han also knows this truth. His grandfather hasn't seen him for months, and he's still in the Dong family. It's hard not to bow his head under the eaves. You use a 1-on-point-1 attack to come over, while I use a 1-on-point-1 attack to defend. Although I can't fight, there won't be much damage. He actually felt that it was good, at least there was someone to play with him, so he didn't feel lonely. Come on, Xinwu, stop practicing and take a break to smoke a cigarette. Mr. Dong took out a pack of cigarettes and skillfully lit one, then stuffed the other one into LV Han's mouth. As LV Zimu pointed it out, he snatched the cigarette from LV Han's mouth. Don't teach children to smoke things. I'm so old that I can still live for a few years. Where's the smoke? I still have a room. What's wrong with ordering a tree for my future granddaughter-in-law? Xinwu, don't listen to your grandfather. As he spoke, he took out another cigarette and lit it in LV Han's mouth. Ah! Grandpa, what did you say about your future granddaughter-in-law? It's so embarrassing. Dong Xinwen shouted and ran away with a red face. Old LV, this girl Xinwen and Xinwu have slept in the same room before. You can't rely on this kiss. Mr. Dong glanced smugly at LV Zimu. You have taken in my family's LV Han as your 12th grandson. This grandson has one granddaughter, how can you marry him? Our family doesn't have those stinky rules like yours. As long as it's not biological, we can get married. Anyway, the name Dong Xinwu was given by me, and it's a perfect match for Xinwen. You're quick to get started, I've only been away for a few days, sighed LV Zimu. Xinwu is in high demand. Besides, you took the initiative to deliver it, so don't blame me, right? Grandpa Dong, can this make people stronger? LV Han asked while coughing. Of course I can. If you smoke one after dinner, what's the taste? Lu Zimu raised his hand and then pinched out the cigarette from Lu Han's mouth, saying. You can smoke as you please. When you become a true powerhouse, you can smoke as you please. How strong are the real powerhouses? Does defeating Grandpa Dong count? Mr. Dong bent down and patted LV Han's shoulder, saying. Defeating me is not a strong person, only those who I recognize are. Xin Wu, when I truly recognize you as a strong person in the future, Grandpa Dong will give you a big box of cigarettes. I will keep my promise, and you must not stop me, old LV. LV Zimu twisted his face and didn't speak, which was considered tacit approval. Xinwen, today you can take this box and draw it as a deposit. Before he could finish speaking, a loud bang of smoke flew out by LV Zimu. Grandpa Dong, why don't you call me LV Han? I can't stand calling me Xianwen. 3 years have passed, from not being able to defeat Dong Xinwen at the beginning to now being tied, which has made Mr. Dong have some doubts about his Xinjiang One Qi technique. Is it possible that this cultivation method is not suitable for women to cultivate? The old man was confused after all. In his memory, both his son and grandson were male, and there was no precedent for women to practice the Xinjiang One Qi technique. Dong Xinwen is even more anxious, from the initial back fight when there was no one to the current draw. She couldn't believe that the guy who had practiced less than herself for 2 years had already been defeated. So Dong Xinwen began to practice more diligently. Until one day I received a message that the Imperial Academy was recruiting students. The recruitment of disciples by the Immortal Sect is not a new thing. Every year, once selected, you will enter the sect and wear Taoist robes, abide by the rules, and someone will casually throw you a practice secret book. You will have to learn on your own while doing miscellaneous work. Although there may be a friendly senior brother guiding you from time to time, this is basically entering the sect to work as a long-term laborer for others. But there are still many poor people who want to squeeze their heads in this way. After all, the sect here is large, and the package of food, housing, and treatment is good, as well as immortal methods to learn. But this time it's different. This is a recruitment of students, not beginners, not wearing Taoist robes, not abiding by rules, taught by the ancestors of Ishan Taoist personally, plus a bowl of immortal soup that enhances daily martial arts. The semester lasts for 12 years. But with an annual tuition fee of 1 million taels, students are destined to be limited to Beijing. These wealthy families in Beijing don't care about the tuition fee of 1 million taels, and the most pleasing condition for them is that they don't need to enter the school. Once you enter the sect, you will be a member of the Immortal Sect. If the sect asks you to go east, you will have to go east. If you want to go west, you will have to go west, and if you want to pay tens of thousands of taels of silver every year to build a sect, you will have to pay. Life cannot be free, which is not what these wealthy people in the northern city hope to see. On the day of registration, more than 100 people crowded into the courtyard in front of the hall. Most of the wealthy children from the northern city arrived, and the Dong family brought in as many as 12 people, including LV Han. The sect leader, Taoist Ishan, personally presided over the entrance examination. That's right, admission requires an exam, not just giving more money to get in. Speaking of it as an exam, LV Han and a few senior brothers thought about it afterwards and realized that it was just a passing act. The personnel had already been predetermined, and the book garden www.zhaoxuan.com was one of the wealthiest in the city. The first test is based on the age of 6 to 12 years old, and all others will be eliminated. Eliminate half of the game at once. There are only 2 people left among the 12 members of the Dong family. The second test is writing. After all, this is a school, and it is impossible to learn a single word without understanding it. The exam content is very simple. Each person is considered qualified by writing their name on a blank piece of paper, but more than 30 people were eliminated. The third draw, everyone was speechless. The first 2 can be understood. Is this the third draw that tests luck? Everyone rolled up the written name paper, pasted a seal, and placed it in a large box, which was personally pulled out by the Patriarch Ishan. 6 people won the lottery in the field. The ranking is not in any particular order, and those who call their names come up first. The daughter of the Grand Elder of Wuwang City, Mo Ling. In. A little girl with dark skin and a straight figure, a heroic face, and dressed in black fur stood up. Dongfu in Beijing, Dong Xinwen. I'm here. A little girl dressed in goose yellow palace attire, with bare hands and waist, and slightly shy eyes, stood up. Beiqing Lu Mansion, Lu ran. Call me, call me. A tall and thin young man pushed LV Han beside him, gently shaking his folding fan and slowly stepping out. North City LV Mansion, LV Han. A young man with an ordinary appearance, a medium build, and dressed in luxurious brocade clothes walked out. Yang Mansion in Beiqing, Yangying. A young man with a short stature, a slightly slender appearance, dressed in a beautiful golden gray robe, and a refined demeanor walked out with square steps. North City Sun Mansion, Sun Fugui. A tall and muscular young man with thick eyebrows and big eyes, dressed in a bright red embroidered robe, took a step forward. Who are you? Chapter 10. Character Chapter Sun Fugui, School One Night. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. After lunchtime, Sun Fugui hurriedly returned to the hall and used his Qi Lucky Pen to copy the 200 times Imperial Judgment that his master had punished him with copying. Although 200 times is not a small number, it is not the record for the most fines received in one go. There was a person who was once punished for copying 500 times and completed it overnight. Sun Fugui didn't have that ability. The advantage of Sun Fugui is that he has one track and is diligent and practical. He will definitely do his best to complete the tasks assigned to him. Lu Ran walked over and looked at the 5 pens raised by Sun Fugui, saying somewhat puzzled. Fatty guy, aren't you able to hold up to 30 pens? What's the rush now? Let's go home and write. Sun Fugui didn't look back, but his spiritual strength remained between paper and pen, and he said. If you don't understand the situation, I won't be able to write it when I go home. 200 sheets, I may not be able to finish them, and I may not be able to go back today. As expected, when he was dismissed from school, Sun Fugui only copied 20 copies 4 times. It's not that he doesn't want to use a few more pens, but that there are only these 5 pens left in the classroom, and the rest have been smashed into the ground slate by the master's aura. Fugui stopped LV Han, who was about to go home. You're close to home, can you lend me 25 pens, 180 sheets of paper, and by the way, ink? My home is far away, so I don't want to go home today. I'll write the rest here. LV Han thought to himself that this is a great opportunity for me to take advantage of you. Lu Han deliberately showed a hint of embarrassment and said, somewhat tactfully. You also know that I have to write 100 times today, and I lent you all my pens. What should I do? That's right, then I'll ask someone else. LV Han cursed inwardly, you are too honest. Can you please ask me again? Hurriedly grabbed Sun Fugui. Since you're in trouble, I can't just stand by and watch. It's impossible to give you a gift, okay? How about I sell you? Sun Fugui is quite happy to be able to buy a pen, which is also good. I need 25 pens and 180 sheets of paper. Before he could finish speaking, LV Han interrupted, but my pens here are sold from a minimum of 100, paper from a minimum of 200, and ink is sold by the barrel. Okay, it's all up to you. How much can paper and pen cost? Lu Han chuckled. Let me calculate, 100 pens for 100 taels is 1,000 taels. 200 sheets of paper for 100 taels is 2,000 taels. Ink is cheaper for you, 500 taels per barrel. You didn't sell me at the market price, it's too expensive. Although Sun Fugui doesn't buy things often, he also knows that this is definitely not a normal price. Lu Han chuckled and said, the 4 treasures of our Lu family's study are incomparable to those low-quality goods on the market. And you have no choice, everyone else has already left. Sun Fugui looked around and indeed there was no one left. Sun Fugui said helplessly, alright, I'll buy it. Hurry up and go get it. I'll give you the money in a few days. Lu Han is very happy, thank you for your patronage. I'll get it for you right away. By the way, I also have some paper weights, pen holders, and high-quality sandalwood at home. Would you like some of them? Why don't you go get it? I'm running out of time. By the way, you can call someone to my house and tell my grandfather that I won't go back tonight. Okay, is this even if I give it to you? An hour later, a sunset hung on the horizon. Sun Fugui was in a daze when he faced the 30 completed copies of the imperial scriptures in front of him, and it wouldn't take him an hour to copy them all. I just feel that my mood is not good today. Of course, he was in a bad mood. He was fooled away 3,500 taels without any reason, and these were just ordinary paper and pens. A few taels in the market were enough. At this moment, the courtyard door was pushed open and a large car stopped at the entrance. A few servants pushed the door and followed an elderly man who was getting old. Grandpa, why did you come? Didn't I say I wouldn't go back today? The person who came was Sun Fugui's grandfather, Sun Yukai. Rich and noble, why don't you go home so late? What are you doing here? Sun Fugui was about to answer when Grandpa's son said again. Have you eaten yet? As soon as I guess you haven't eaten, guess what I brought you? After finishing speaking, a few servants waved their hands and placed 4 huge black painted gold-bordered food boxes in front of Sun Fugui. Each food box was divided into 3 layers, with 12 layers spread out horizontally. Each layer was divided into several compartments and filled with exquisite delicacies. Sun Fugui and his grandfather sat cross-legged in this courtyard, eating boxes after boxes of dishes cooked by his grandfather himself. Sun Fugui was very happy. Come on, eat this. I made it the best. If it had been before, not everyone could have eaten it. Sun Yukai kept stuffing vegetables into Sun Fugui's box. Hey, look, this is my favorite dish when I was young. After finishing speaking, the old man picked up a piece of meat and wanted to put it in his mouth. Sun Fugui raised his hand and used chopsticks to pick up the piece of meat from his grandfather's mouth and put it in his own mouth. This is what my grandfather made for me. My grandfather wants to eat it at home, but I don't have enough myself. After speaking, he wolfed down the food again. Hey, you little heartless person, what can I do if I eat a piece of meat from you? Are you still protective? To put it bluntly, Grandpa felt even happier watching his grandson enjoy the delicious food he made, and kept telling him about his struggle to make a fortune back then. Sun Yukai started from scratch completely. When he was young, he worked as a carpenter, bricklayer, and cook, and Sun Yukai knew most of these basic skills. After the Battle of the Broken City 40 years ago. At that time, Sun Yukai, like others, endured a long period of hunger. He knows what it feels like to go hungry. Later, with the help of his excellent cooking skills and his wife, he opened a small restaurant in the western city, starting from the lowest level of vegetable soup. During the day, he sold vegetable soup and at night, he went into the mountains to dig wild vegetables. Although there is only wild vegetable soup as a dish, it was good to have it in that era. In this way, the couple managed this restaurant better and better with their extraordinary cooking skills and hard-working spirit. So a few years later, several branches opened. The business grew bigger and bigger, and later it was targeted by people. Someone started coming to collect protection fees, and if it were just one family, it would be fine. Several people from different gangs took turns coming to collect protection fees, which severely impacted the business of the Sun family. So he took the initiative to unite with several other large businesses to support a gang, which was the Dong family's One Chi Association. Dong Tianxing did not disappoint them either. With the support of some big merchants, he led his subordinates to fight several tens of thousands of people and subdued all the gangs, unifying the underground world that did not return to the city. In this way, the Sun family and several other major chambers of commerce only need to pay protection fees for one, and business has started to improve again. 30 years ago, the construction of Wuwang City entered its final stage, and after the barbarians gradually moved in, Sun Yu realized that the houses of the surrounding residents in these 4 main cities had not changed much from 10 years ago. Due to the construction of the Wuwang City, the civil engineering, gold, and stones cut down by the miners under the LV family were mainly prioritized for supply to the barbarians. This means that those who do not return to the city have no materials to build houses. Sun Yukai later found LV Zimu and wanted to buy some civil engineering, gold, and stone to build a house for sale. As Wuwang City was about to be completed and did not require much construction, LV Zimu agreed to Sun Yukai, and he recruited a large number of carpenters, bricklayers, and apprentices based on his reputation in the western city. Started the business of building houses for people. At the same time as the real estate business, the catering business did not fall behind. Later, the combination of these two businesses gave rise to a third type, the inn business. Due to the large size of the city, people who go to other cities for business cannot travel back and forth on the same day, and often have to stay at his inn. At its peak, Sun Yukai even designed and built the fifth largest city, the Central City. The Central City is surrounded by three major cities, and after completion, it is mainly used for commercial purposes. There are numerous restaurants and inns in the city, and there are numerous places for romance, as well as smokehouses. There are countless merchants and workshops, and there is a flood of merchants and vendors. Is it the busiest place in the city of Fugui? Due to the establishment of the Central City, commercial exchanges between the four major cities accelerated the prosperity of the non-returned city. Later, Sun Yukai gained the reputation of being the fifth lord of the city. Mr. Sun watched with a smile as Sun Fugui finished his last box of vegetables, which was the happiest time of his day. The servant tidied up the food box. Sun Yukai wiped the oil stains on Sun Fugui's mouth with his sleeve. Rich and noble, study hard here, Grandpa will go back first. After finishing speaking, the old man turned around and walked towards the outside of the courtyard. After a few steps, he seemed to remember something and turned around to say, "Hey, Richie, what are you doing here? Why don't you go home even when it's dark? You see, it's already past dinner." Sun Fugui smiled and said, "Grandpa, have you forgotten? You're here to bring me food." After speaking, he gave a glance to a servant behind him. The servant nodded slightly and turned to the discharge door, carrying 4 food boxes as he walked in. "I remember now. Look at my memory, come on, take it up." 4 food boxes spread out 12 layers, with the same dishes sitting across the knees, one happily eating and the other happily talking. This was the second happiest time of the day for Mr. Sunday. After finishing the last box and sending Grandpa out, a servant beside him shook his head slightly. Sun Fugui nodded lightly to show that he knew. Today, Grandpa made 2 servings. If there are usually 3 or 4 portions available. Perhaps it was because Sun Yukai suffered from hunger when he was young that he was particularly persistent about eating. Upon being escorted outside the courtyard, Sun Yukai said, "Rich and noble, haven't you eaten yet? When you go home, Grandpa will make it for you." Sun Yukai took the hand of Fugui and walked towards the west, even forgetting the beast cart beside him. Sun Fugui held his grandfather's hand and slowly released his spiritual power. "Grandpa, my grandson has already eaten it." "You've had it, okay, what did I do here?" "Grandpa, it's already dark. You should rest now. I'm really a bit tired from what you said." A few servants helped the old man onto the car, and Sun Fugui finally released his grandfather's hand and stopped releasing his spiritual energy. Watching the beast cart disappear, Sun Fugui silently recited, "Wait a little longer, just wait for me a little longer, Grandpa." Sun Yotsai's illness has been going on for several years, initially not serious, but in the past 2 years it has become increasingly severe. He often forgets what he was doing before and has an inexplicable obsession with something, which is watching his grandson eat. He always thinks his grandson has no food to eat. Both life-saving straws sank. The Holy Hand Divine Dr. Su Yen clearly stated that if it cannot be cured, it can only delay the onset. After all, the Divine Doctor is not an immortal and there are things that cannot be done. Ishan, the ancestor of the Immortal Sect, stated that his martial arts skills were limited, and if his teacher was still present, there was still a possibility. Grandpa's son cooks for his grandson not every day or two, but every day. After all, no one can stand eating like this every day, let alone Grandpa's dishes are not delicious at all. Either add more salt or forget to add vinegar. Son Fugui ranked second, with 3 younger sisters, 1 younger brother, and 1 older brother above. The grandchildren fled like ghosts when they saw their grandfather, which made him very unhappy. Due to the black and green immortal soup, Son Fugui's physique has changed, and even if he doesn't eat, drink, or sleep every day, there is no problem at all. The constitution of a semi-immortal ensures that no matter how much he eats, it will not have a negative impact on the cultivation path. But this seriously changed his body shape. For years ago, when he entered school, he was still a tall and burly teenager with thick eyebrows and big eyes. Now, besides being equally tall, he has become a clumsy and chubby person. But he never cared about these changes. When others called him Son Fugui, he agreed, and when others called him Son Fatty, he also agreed. As long as Grandpa is happy, that's nothing. The moon is already in mid-heaven, and time is limited. Son Fugui is calculating in his heart. 30 sheets in 2 hours, and there's still. I can't finish it, absolutely not. If I had a chance, there might still be a glimmer of possibility, but for some reason, I'm feeling down today. Son Fugui picked up 30 pens and wrote on paper. 30 more sheets have been written, but it's already late at night. This time, Son Fugui finally found the reason for his poor mood. During the day, when there were many people, Son Fugui didn't feel much of it. At night, when he was feeling calm, he always remembered the scene of the master inserting 9 pens into the slate during the day, which made him unable to concentrate and slowed down his writing speed. The idea of replacing it came to Son Fugui's mind. Son Fugui came to the stone slab. 9 holes arranged in a row. The edges of the stone slab were tightly fitted and unable to be touched. Son Fugui inserted his fingers into the hole, which was too small to fit in. He touched his head and suddenly had a plan to swing his fist and smash the stone slab. After all, he was a cultivator and smashed it in just a few strokes. Son Fugui lifted the stone slab one by one from the ground and piled it up in the corner of the yard. I started searching for stone slabs in the corners of the yard and hall again, and remembered to set them back in their original place. These stone slabs were exactly the same size, which saved me the effort of polishing. Son Fugui started performing fluorescence surgery and looked around with his head down. Suddenly, he bumped into a soft and fluffy object. Looking up, a soft barrier blocked his way, and this was exactly behind the screen where the teacher was lecturing. Through the soft barrier, one can see that the opposite side is also a courtyard, which is too far to see clearly. Son Fugui did not hesitate about what this barrier was for. He lowered his head and focused his energy to remove the stone slab under his feet from the ground, but he failed. The weight of the stone slab was far greater than that of paper and pen. In addition, there is no place to start using gray soil around the thicket, so it is extremely difficult to completely remove it. But Son Fugui, who was quick-witted, saw him wielding his fists like a gust of wind, shattering all the other stone slabs around him. After clearing the stones, he returned to the hall with the intact stone slab in the middle and pressed it onto the previously vacant ground. Looking at the newly paved ground in front of me, I felt very happy and completely forgot about the pile of gravel behind the screen. In an hour, there were 30 more, which was already much faster than before, but Son Fugui was not happy at all. He leaned against the pillar in front of the hall and looked at the white fish belly in the sky. It was almost dawn. I took out a cylindrical metal small bottle from my pocket. The bottle was not big and only had 2 fingers that were about 3 inches thick, very delicate and smooth. Whether you can finish it or not depends on you. # In his sleep, Son Fugui felt someone patting his face. Lu Han's voice came over. Don't sleep, take a look for yourself.